Hi, this is Dangerous Dan Fitzgerald. You're listening to Ride by Day, Wrench by Night, presented by VintageJetSki.
Hello and welcome back to Ride by Day, Wrench by Night with me, Cam Wise. With the season having come to an end, there's only one natural interview that needs to take place, and that's to chat to the winner of the 2021 World Finals. However, whilst there might be plenty to talk about on this one impressive achievement alone, you're in for a particular treat today because the man who took out the title was none other than Dangerous Dan Fitzgerald. A man that has rubbed rails with the best of them from the glory days. That's right, Dan's career has spanned over 30 years and has seen him regularly earning top 5 positions against the big names of the sport in the Pro Mod class during the early 90s, before he went on to even bigger heights. We cover an incredible play-by-play recap of when Dan took out the last race in the 1995 National Tour in Dallas in the 1200 Runabout class. We nerd out on the differences between MRD mechanical fuel injection and Triton EFI systems. Dan has run them both. How he managed a full-time accounting career whilst balancing his ambitions to become a pro jet skier as a privateer with only minimal sponsorship support, and how his grit and determination paid dividends when factory Yamaha Team Riva came knocking on his door with an opportunity that he couldn't refuse. We finish off with some in-depth advice from Dan on how to modify your 550 for the best performance possible, plus so many more interesting insights along the way. So, let's get started. Dan, thanks so much, mate, for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. What I like to ask all of my guests is how they found themselves in the sport that we all love and have a passion for.
Jet ski riding. You know, my first opportunity at riding a jet ski was probably 1980. I was in high school. A friend of mine, his folks picked up a couple of 440s, and I rode this jet ski at the lake. And initially, I thought, oh, this is okay. This isn't, this is fun. But, at the time I was surfing, riding dirt bikes, grew up doing all these sports, skimboarding, skateboarding. I had a half pipe. Basically had a half pipe in my front yard for like 10 years. And
that's cool.
So it's it was a fun sport. And, I didn't initially fall in love with it until we went in the surf. And we got in the surf up in Ventura, just probably 6 months later. And it was like the light bulb just went on. I must have rode 500 waves in 2 hours. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have to paddle out. And I can just surf and jump and, just be a lunatic. And I just fell in love with the sport, and I stopped racing dirt bikes, and I stopped surfing and got a jet ski like 1981, I think. 79 440, kind of immediately turned it into a 474, and it pretty much lived in the back of a Dodge Ram 50 truck with a camper shell. And every chance I got, I would ride this jet ski, and whether it be surf or go to the lake, it just addicted to the things, and just rode as much as I could.
How old were you at that point?
Let's say, I don't know, 21, around 21.
So were you wrenching on them as well? Were you modifying it to make it snappier in the surf?
Yeah, back then, we would put pistons from remember the motorcycle, but it made them a 474, and then ported the cylinders. We had kind of a spec that we did way back when, and Mariner pipe and Mariner exhaust manifold and a super screw impeller. It was like this bronze impeller that weighed a ton. Mariner intake grate, ride plate, and they were just rocket ships. 32 miles an hour.
Blow your doors off.
Oh, the funny thing is, at the time, I wanted to go race. And they didn't really have a class for novice modified. There wasn't a class. You could either ride stock 440 or stock 550. So I took that modified ski in 84 and got rid of it and bought a stone stock 84 550. Went to the Long Beach National, like a week after I bought the thing, they raced 2 days. We raced Sunday and Monday. And I raced it Sunday. I won my first moto. And then Monday, I went to race it. And I hit a guy in the first turn. And knocked the cooling line off. And the motor overheated. And that motor had to come apart. And the ski went from looking like brand new under the hood to it melted all the paint off the motor. And
oh wow!
I took the motor out and put pistons in it. And anyway, that
was it flying. Was it flying for a minute there before it cooked itself?
You know what? I just remember clobbering into somebody in the first turn and being in the middle of the pack somewhere, and then the thing just stopped, just seized. And
yeah,
that was my first experience of racing a jet ski, and it was at Long Beach Marine Stadium, and it was already huge. The sport was already pretty big at the time, and it just kept going from there. And it was back in those days, and we could go surf ride almost anywhere. They weren't chasing us. There was no rules. We go to Carpinteria Beach and just like go in and out of people swimming, and they didn't even know what to do with us. It's like it was really lawless, and we could get away with murder. Would launch. I can remember we'd get these rainstorms and the spillways would fill up, and we would just take our little jet ski carts. They only weighed 250 pounds. We just cart them down to some spillway and just start riding them. Riding them anywhere.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Can't do any of that these days, can you?
Oh, Jesus. They just take you to jail. And then, there was no YouTube. There was no filming any of this stuff. So there's no evidence. So it's like, I watch these kids doing these crazy things. And it's just like, you guys are filming this. You're idiots. You're all going to end up in jail. And some of them do end up in jail. When we stuff, no film, no nothing, if they didn't catch it right then and there was no catching, So
I like that. It's half of the fun.
Yeah, it was
getting away with it.
Yeah, it was really a fun time. There's like a group of us that all rode together, and it was a great time.
Yeah. And is your old man into motorsport as well? Did he teach you how to wrench, or how did that come about?
My old man, he rode dirt bikes a little bit, but he worked on his own cars, and my grandfather was a machinist. My uncle was a mechanic, and I was handing those guys, including my father, I was handing those guys tools when from practically birth, 2 years old, I was handing those guys tools. So I never remember a point in time where I didn't know what a half-inch wrench was, or or even just, I need a wrench for this bolt. And from the youngest age, I know, okay, that's looks like a half-inch wrench. So I very much grew up, building my own bicycles when I was 7. I took and converted a barn. My parents had an old barn in their backyard, and I converted that into my own bicycle shop when I was like 7 years old. I used to go down to the dump, it was only about a mile away, and I would pick out bicycles and bike parts. Kind of like you see all these guys with the bicycles around their.
Yeah.
That was like my parents' barn. So I'd go to the dump, pick up bicycle parts, and build bicycles and sell them to the kids in the neighborhood. And that was my job when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old.
That's awesome. So after that first race, you've cooked your engine. What happened then? Did that sort of spark the love affair and wanting to modify, or could you modify them a lot after that?
No, I honestly don't remember, because I don't think I made it to the World Finals in '84. I was going to college, and it seemed like the World Finals would fall right into midterm exams. And getting through college was pretty important to me, and getting a degree. And I missed World Finals that year, but it seemed like there was some regional races, Elsinore races that I hit. 85, I rode stock 550 expert, and I won that national at Long Beach that following year. And then when they tore us down, I had rebuilt the motor, but I had trimmed the base gasket, just use a razor blade and just match the base gasket. And I got disqualified
Oh no.
for having a matched base gasket. It was like, really? Because I didn't hole shot any race. I banged my way to to the front in one of them, I'm sure. And then I ended up first overall, but I got DQ'd for the trim base gasket.
Did it change the compression much at all anyway?
Oh, it has nothing to do with the compression. It just the base gasket where the transfer ports, I just matched the gasket to the transfer ports on both sides. And it was just like a little bit of a trim. And
okay.
I didn't.
So how does that work? Because I mean, I don't know. I thought in trimming it, I thought it meant it made the stroke rate different.
Where the stock base gasket comes into the transfer port, it really hangs and it blocks part of the transfer port. So probably almost 2 millimeters of the transfer port is blocked by the base gasket. So I just took razor blade and matched it to the base gasket. Did it give it any more horsepower? I don't.
But surely it would have actually flowed a bit better. Now I'm understanding what you mean.
It definitely would flow better. And did it make it perform better? Probably a little bit. But it was, it wasn't legal, and I got DQ'd. And so,
wow. Well, there you go. Lesson learned.
Yeah, and then ran some regional races, won a few like Lake Elsinore races, and I raced the finals that year. And I remember the motor was wore out, and I didn't have enough money to do anything to it at the time, so I just raced it. I finished mid-pack. And then that was 85, 86. We kind of started running expert modified in 86. And
is this the time of Brian Bendix was pretty dominant?
It seems like Bendix was like 84, 85.
Right.
It seems like by 86, that was the time. Bendix and Castrucci and Larry, was still pretty competitive back then. But, you had Jeff was racing expert, I think in 86, and Harry in 86. I'm pretty sure because I remember those guys came back from tour and I had won some of the Lake Elsinore races. And then Harry and Jeff came back from tour and Jeff and Harry both beat me at the final round of that Lake Elsinore race. And Jeff was so good. He was so smooth. It was like, Jesus Christ. It's just like his little kid, kind of like, almost Coy Curtis size at the time,
Yeah.
Maybe a little bigger than Coy, but still, really smooth and rode, just incredible talent. He turned pro in 87. Jeff did. And, I was an expert for another couple of years, 87, 88, 89.
So I guess being that young, you wouldn't have been friends straight away because he's kind of a kid and you're already sort of a man at that stage. How did that relationship unfold? Because I understand that you did, that you became good friends and you started training a lot with Jeff and the family.
Well, reasonably gregarious at the races. So, we all kind of got to know each other. And I used to talk to Jeff here and there. Jeff was, pretty shy. He didn't talk much. And, but his older brother and myself became really good friends, Mike. And ultimately, Mike and I worked for the same accounting firm, Arthur Anderson. I graduated before Mike. And then probably 6 months before, maybe even a year before, maybe 6 months. And I kind of helped Mike get an interview. And then Mike initially invited me to come practice with those guys down at Senator's Wash, probably 89, something like that. And it was funny because he said, now, we're going to, maybe it was Sunbeam Lake that we went and practiced at. And he goes, now, you're not going to be able to beat my mom at practice, but don't feel bad.
That's a red rag to a bull.
And he was right. His mom was freaking fast,
Karen Jacobs.
Karen fast. And I can remember my first time riding and I'm like, I couldn't, it's like practicing with these guys. It's not like I can rail off somebody. And I hate to say it, that was, as far as I was concerned, if somebody was in front of me, if I felt like I was getting blocked, I might go inside and give
him a nudge.
But Karen was fast and Jeff was like, so fast. And, so I realized if I'm going to keep up with these guys, I got to start training. So I started training. I started running and really try to increase my fitness. But at the same time, I was working for Arthur Anderson, working nearly 1,000 hours of overtime a year. So,
yeah, right.
So what really suffered was, I'd work there for 12 hours, come home, wrench, and then at 10 o'clock I'd run. And I had this route that I'd run, and I'd come back, crash about midnight, get up at 5, and I used to sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. And
wow.
And then just as time went on, just got to know the family more and more, and we rode together a lot and went surf road together, went down to Mexico and rode surf, and just, in some ways I almost felt like it was another big brother to Jeff, quite a bit older than Jeff. I think Jeff was born in 1970, I think. And, I'm born in 63. So, quite a bit older than those guys. And for that matter, I was quite a bit older than a lot of the pros at the time. I went and got a degree and, was working for a big accounting firm and, basically lose the suit and go to a jet ski race. But,
yeah. So it must have been a bit of a trek to the surf though, because I know it's Senator's Wash, which sounds like it was the local place for you guys. It's halfway, for those who don't know, it's halfway between San Diego and Phoenix, just above Yuma.
Right.
It seems like a bit of a trek to get to the surf if that was where your local waterhole was.
Well, we would, those guys lived in El Cajon. So I might go down there if we were going to ride surf. I might go down and spend the night at the Jacobs place, like Saturday night, and we would maybe go down to, go down to the surf from there. Or sometimes we'd practice down at Mission Bay, and then, or we go to Oceanside, or sometimes we go to Mexico. And then a lot of times weekends when Mike lived up in LA, this is Jeff's older brother, we would drive from LA and meet up at Senator's Wash. The guys from Phoenix, most of those guys were all in X2s, would meet at Senator's Wash, and Jeff and, maybe one of his buddies would come up, and we'd all ride at Senator's Wash for just a weekend. It was like boot camp. I mean, literally on a 550 Reed, you'd burn nearly a full tank of gas in every moto. They'd be like,
wow.
They'd be like freaking 30 to 40 minute motos. You'd get out of the water, and a half hour later, Jeff's dad, Bill, would be, okay, guys, back in the water. And it was like sink or swim. And
how many of you guys were out in the water at any one time if you in these races or these motos?
10 to 15. Wow,
what an epic time to thrash around on a ski. What a good time.
It was amazing. I can remember one time I was in a turn, and it was a lot of skis, and I went down and I was climbing back up, and it was either Colin Berry or Mike just ran right over me, went right over the top of me, landed. I got up and just took off, and just like didn't even miss a beat. It was so much. It was really fun and really intense. And, we'd play Australian Pursuit.
Yes, I've heard epic stories about that. Can you explain to everyone what an Australian Pursuit is, please?
Well, you would basically, the fastest guy would be in the back, and the slowest guy or girl would be in the front. And if you got past, you had to pull off the track. And so the goal was to constantly be moving forward, not because if you moved backwards, you were done. So a lot of those Australian Pursuits ended up with Jeff just following me through the pack, and like the two of us would be left. And but there'd be times where it didn't end up like that. But it seems like a lot of them, towards the end of our practicing, probably on the 750s, like if I got out in front on the 750, it was, I had a really good practice 750, kind of with a big prop. It was really easy to ride with, put lead under the tank, and it handled really good. And Jeff would really struggle to pass me on that thing. And I was kind of like the rabbit. I'd get out in front, and it would be like, okay, come on with it. And it was fun. And it definitely, if you want to get fast at something, you got to practice with guys that are better than you,
That's true.
Because if you're practicing with people that aren't better than you, but part of the beauty of that whole group was we had guys on X2s, and X2s made twice the weight of a 550, and they were, 2 of them, 2 of the guys on X2s, made 2 times the weight of a 550. And, we had guys on X2s that made 2 times the weight of a 550. And, we had guys on X2s that made 2 times the weight of a 550. and they could go quite a bit faster on the track. So by practicing with X2s, it would increase your speed.
Made you better. I heard Jeff's dad was really, really structured in his training program for him and I guess everyone.
I don't know if it's structure as much as there wasn't much time to rest. It's like, you get out of the water, put gas in the ski.
Discipline, should I say?
Yeah. I didn't need it. It's like I was down there to practice anyway. So I didn't give a shit, hanging around, BSing.
Well, that's the feeling I get. I've heard stories about this epic Senators Wash training ground and, people that if they were there just to muck around, Jeff's dad is like, you're here for one thing. And if it's not to train, don't come back.
There were guys that came down and they came one time and they never came again. And you guys, if anybody listens to this, you guys are going to know who I'm talking about because you came down and it was like, oh, these guys are crazy. I don't want to work this hard. And you went back home and you never came back to Senators. And it's funny because I can think right now, like 4 different guys that came down and never, and it was boot camp, man. It was, get in the water, ride, if you weren't willing to do that, you weren't getting invited back, Yeah.
It's kind of an exclusive deal.
It kind of was. It was like you were invited to come down, but and Bill was, Bill wanted what was best for Jeff. He wanted Jeff to be a champion again. And I'll tell you what, Jeff is, he was, probably the most gifted natural athlete that probably ever rode a jet ski. I hung out with Jeff enough to have done sports. I've got a funny story about Jeff. We go to a batting cage in Zion, Illinois. I think it was Zion. Maybe it was Virginia Beach. And sometimes these places start melding together.
Mixing. Yeah.
We're at a batting cage. So we start off in the medium pitch and, we're hitting them pretty good. And Jeff goes to the faster pitch and he's murdering that thing like home runs. Then he goes to the one where the guys are hanging around with like baseball helmets and look like they're real baseball players. Jeff's in flow hose, trunks, and tank top. And he's in this batting cage and he just is murdering this thing still. And then he goes, hey, watch this. And he starts hitting the ball through the hole where the ball comes out. So he gets off the batting cage and these guys go, who do you play for? And Jeff's like, what? He goes, I don't play for anybody. They thought he was a baseball player. So, he's like one of those guys,
Yeah, just got that talent.
So It was kind of like in that situation, as far as jet ski racing against the guy, expectations of beating him, it's like, maybe if Jeff breaks down. But, and there was plenty of us that went to the starting line thinking the same thing. That's like,
yeah, that's true.
Back in those days, if Jeff breaks down, then we got to crack at this. Although he got beat heads up here and there when he didn't break, but it was rare, especially modified class. Super stock is a little different class, but every once in a while, it would happen, but pretty rare.
Did you ever have a win over him? Have you ever got a memory of you crossing the line in front of him and looking back and going, yeah, I got you this time, mate?
I different stories. I won a super stock national at a hot water tour in 1991. And it was in the surf and it was kind of smooth water between waves and it was very much timing. And I hole shotted and won the race. And it was, Scott Clow cylinder super stock. It was a good ski. But come to find out after the race that Jeff's super stock had broken down. So
just not as sweet then, is it?
No, but then I got another one. We had the hot water tour and the IGSBA tour run at the same time. So we were in it wasn't Dallas, wasn't Houston. Man, I can't remember what city it was in Texas. Anyway, my super stock broke down. I had my practice 550 mod that it wasn't much faster than a really good super stock, but had good acceleration. And my old man was at that race and the super stock was down. And I told the old man, I'm like, all right, Pop, I'm going to race this practice mod. And if I'm in the top 3, I'm going to drop to my knee, lift the hood, make it look like I got some kind of problem. We're going to finish just out of tech. I'm coming right to the beach. We're putting it right in the trailer. And so I hole shot it, and white flag lap, I was out in front. And
oh, beauty.
I don't remember if it was Jeff or Victor behind me, but I just dropped to my knee, picked up the hood like I had some kind of problem with the ski, milked it the last lap, and rolled into for 4th place. And we loaded it in the trailer, and somebody after the race says, "That wasn't your super stock race, that was your mod." And it's like, fuck you. You know, I didn't get,
I love it.
I didn't get teched. So, but that was one of those things.
The plan worked.
So anyway, you know, that's one of those, you know, oopsie.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know. My mistake.
Anyway, I'll tell you, once we got into the 750s, you know, that 92, 93 year, it was such an equalizer that I'm pretty sure that I had beaten Jeff a few times once we got on those big boats, but it was a whole different animal. The tour, everything changed in 92. You know, 91, we were all still on 440, 550s. You know, the 92 that was the first year that, you know, you had super jets on tour, you had 650s, you had 750s, you know, it was kind of like, you know, a lot of different things, and definitely a lot of experimenting in that year. So
was it a bit of a bittersweet? Because on one hand, you're moving forward, the bigger displacement, a different hull that's probably a bit easier to ride because of its buoyancy, it's wider, it's easier to get up onto. But you'd also put in so much tech and development over the years and trained on 550s, 440s for so long that, you know, all that's now irrelevant. I mean, I guess the principles of engine building are the same, but you would have had everything sorted, tweaked to the max on those 550s, right?
It wasn't that it was irrelevant, you know, like the 440s and 550s, Jeff with that fuel injected PJS stuff, he had a distinct advantage over everybody. Not only was he extremely talented, but he had, you know, really fast equipment.
Yeah, that was crazy.
The equipment that I had those years was not as fast as the stuff, some of the other stuff, but it was pretty damn reliable. I went in IGSBA tour. I went like 19 for 20 races on that tour. And it was, the hot water was a little different. We had that super stock failure, which turned out just to be a bad aftermarket battery cable. But the 550s, we'd all raced them for so long. It's kind of like you knew what you had to do. Like to keep the 550, 440, literally the crankshaft, crankcase assemblies. I used to replace them every other race. You know,
wow.
They would start vibrating, like the cranks would start coming out of true and they'd start vibrating, and literally nuts and bolts, no matter, even with red Loctite, would start falling off these things. So
wow.
I would take, and one weekend I'd be putting a new bottom end. I wouldn't even change rings, on these things, just literally bottom ends. And I would, back then, I think Pasadena Kawasaki would sell me cases and cranks at dealer cost. And I would put a rotating assembly together, and then I'd take the rotating assembly out and sell it to some local guy for nearly the same price that I would pay for the rotating assembly, that the brand new rotating assembly.
Yeah, well, you had it at a discount, so he's thinking he's got to win.
Right. So I would, and then put it back together, and that kept everything really, things wouldn't vibrate off, without doing that. If you ran more than that, you'd have exhaust manifolds trying to fall off things, pipes trying to fall off, hose clamps trying to rotate off. They just shake, you'd rev them to the moon. And, that was an expensive year, just because I purchased so many, pieces and a lot of work, a lot of work.
Do you remember what the cranks cost back then?
$300.
Yeah, right.
I don't even think they're 300. I think they're like 280, and the cases were like 160 or something. And
why did you need new cases? Just because they were worn out or threaded? Or what was the go?
The front bearing surface on the cases would notoriously start going away. The cranks would want to go out of true. and the front bearing case surface would start going away. So it was like I would just replace both things at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there'll be people that thought it was overkill, but you know what? It worked. I was super reliable with engines. And I was watching Jeff and that crew. I was practicing with those guys, and they would just replace whole motors.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a new motor in the ski every weekend. So, it's like I looked at the weakest link, and that really was the crank. The pistons would last practically a whole season, but the cranks wouldn't. So, and then the cranks, and then the rods would notoriously blow right through the side of the case and destroy a cylinder. I was trying to circumvent that reality as well. See, back in those days, we didn't have rev limiters.
Yeah.
Your rev limiter.
Were you running total loss as well?
Yeah, we were running KVs, static timing, and if you were in rough water and you weren't, lifting, the motor would freaking rev to the moon, and a couple of good revs like that, and the rod would blow through the side of those things.
Yeah. Interesting way to look at it. I guess, you being an accountant as well, you probably know your numbers better than anyone else, and also experience knowing what fails and when. But bottom end, I haven't really thought of it that way. Everybody's like, yep, we'll freshen up the ski. We'll give it a new top end, change the pistons, fix up the head, deck it, and all that kind of thing. But you're looking at the bottom end, which actually makes sense if that's where it's failing.
Yeah, it's a waste. It's like
costs a bit more though.
I've had this business for years, and I can tell you how many people wanted me to just do the top end. I'm like, no, but you don't let me do the whole motor, I don't want the job. Because put a top end and the rod will blow 2 rides later, and the thing will be freaking junk.
On the topic of racing with the likes of Jeff, because I guess you teamed up, there's Jeff and say Chris Fischetti or Jeff and Harry Gocher, they all trained individually. They didn't really train together, did they? I believe it was a closed shop at Senator's Wash, just with select people. I would say probably the next fastest pro that Bill would allow, practice. Cause I don't think Bill necessarily ever thought that I'd beat Jeff, in the 445-50 for sure. In the 750, 92 World Finals, he hole shot it. I got a second place start. Oh, sweet. Did you ever get a chance to ride any of his 550s just, on casually when you were at Senator's Wash or some of those more family days?
Never did.
Did you ever have, really?
Never did.
Just wasn't a done thing or it just wasn't allowed? Just wasn't even an option?
I probably could have. Ridden them, but, it's like, I never did. It's kind of, I don't know. In hindsight, maybe I should have, but yeah, I don't think I ever rode a 550. Thinking about 750s, I think I did the 750s. When the development was new, I think Greg Beaver was, he's the one that was coming out in 92 before the World Finals. I had a 750, it was built one way, and Jeff had one another way. And, I think Greg said, hey, ride this thing, see what you think. It's like, the power on his been a little different place than mine. Mine was a little more off the bottom. He's a little more on top. And, but I needed the bottom. I weighed 165 pounds at the time, and Jeff probably weighed 120, so. Yeah, right. So I needed something to come out of the hole a little better. And, Jeff had the advantage of being really light.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your expert career, at what stage, give me the early year to the last year of your expert career, because I believe you had quite a few sponsors. I've read on some of the pictures I've seen on your boat. You've got quite a few. I'll list a couple of them. We've got Moby's Wetsuits, Shoei, Spitfire, Jetonetics, Motul, Kaufman's, Diamond, FMF, Power Bar, Triton, Jet Trim, Scat Track, Shredmaster, and also L&S.
That was all kind of 91, 92,
right.
Stuff. Now, the expert days, I don't think I listed any sponsor on a jet ski.
So that was all your pro years, was it?
Yeah, that was
those sponsors.
Expert years, it was like, shit, I had Skull and Crossbones on the hood of my jet ski at some point back then, I had it on the back of a helmet. I think in 95, I had a sticker that said, "You pass, you die." On it. So, I was kind of an idiot. It's like,
Yeah, but you're
maybe-
young, like, you're going hard. You don't really think about the
And
perception from the public's point of view.
I don't know. I thought I was a punker or something. I don't know what I thought I was doing. It's like,
Yeah.
in hindsight, it was kind of a little bit antisocial, but, whatever. You were talking about sponsors. I think after I got number 5 in 91, it's like I called up everybody and, what can you give me? Oh, I'll give you a sticker. Okay, I'll put it on the jet ski. It's not quite, not quite that ridiculous, but, the reality is there was only a couple guys that were getting money, Jeff, Victor got some money, Chris got some money from Mariner back then. Harry, I think he had R&R, funding the bill, and I had, Visa MasterCard.
Current standings: Jeff Jacobs, Chris Cachetti, Harry Gocher, Tom Bonacci, and Mark Eckert. And right now in 6th place is boat number 13, Dan Fitzgerald out of Tahunga, California. Dan, very consistent, 5th in the Pro Modified class on the national tour. 3 5th-place finishes: Long Beach, California, Chicago, and Daytona. He is racing poor boy style, meaning he has no major sponsors.
Well, for Dan to finish at a consistent 5th every weekend without factory support is quite an accomplishment.
In 91, I think Jetnetics, I teamed up with Joe Gelson, who bought it. He had a big, huge box van. And I think Bob Pernice from Jetnetics was paying for the fuel in that. I think he was paying my entry fees, but White Brothers might have been paying my entry fees. Then somebody was, but I can't remember who. But I know in 92, I wasn't paying entry fees. And Mobies was giving us wetsuits, Jetnetics ignitions, Good Times, that was the, year I raced in the 650. Good Times was doing the engines. They very little, money per se. I think some of the deals, like White Brother deals, were contingent. There are a lot of contingent deals, top 5 finishes, you'll get some money.
Yeah.
I had some people, the diamond thing, I got stiffed on that deal. That was, supposed to be money, and I never got anything out of that.
What did Diamond, what were they? What was their business?
He was manufacturing jet ski parts and jet ski pumps. And at the time, kind of in some ways competing with Scat Track, whatever. It's another story. And it was just, those things where it just didn't work out,
Yeah, and it's history now.
Yeah.
I believe there's a bit of a story behind LNS in Steve Strickland. And
right. We came through, we came through the 91 tour, and, my stuff was pretty wore out. I was kind of out of money. That was notoriously the reality. It's like, how, do I get another credit card, or do I just stop spending money, And,
yeah.
So I had Chuck Kuntz was, I think, the race director at the time, or I think Chuck Kuntz was, and he said, we were all after the Phoenix race. It might have been a hot water race, and we raced at night, and we were all in the bar drinking, and Strickland was there and Kuntz, and he kind of put the two of us together, and so basically I hung out at the LNS shop, and Ed Lazinski and Steve kind of, just let me, kind of have my way with the place. And, they helped me, freshen everything up. And it literally was just a one world finals. That was it. 91, I had SCR in the hood of the ski, Scott Clow Racing. And, Scott would just, he's like probably one of the best 2-stroke engine builders ever. And, he was porting cylinders from me and doing machine work, building cranks, and LNS, basically helped me out for the World Finals. And I was going to ride one of their modified skis at the finals. And I had tweaked my ski so much for handling that, when I tried to ride their ski, it was like, everything was set up different, and it was going to be hard to jump from my super stock to their modified. Yeah. So I ended up just riding my ski, that Ed and Steve had, kind of helped me out with parts and stuff to get it, put together. And then After
Was this
that,
at the stage where Harry was still there, or was 91? Was that when he was at West Coast, so he'd moved on?
he had moved on from there. He was West Coast there, maybe R&R. Can't remember. I can't remember if Harry was R&R or West. I think West Coast, because I think R&R was before.
But he wasn't there. He wasn't in the shop, and you're high-fiving going, oh, this is cool. We're going to race each other on the weekend.
Yeah, Harry wasn't there for sure.
Okay.
I think Harry was there I think Harry was there in like the 80s, the late 80s. And then Harry ended up, I think, with R&R right after that. And I think Harry ended up with West Coast after that. I think like in that 91 tour, Harry got fourth. And I think he was riding for West Coast then.
Yeah.
But
no, that would make sense.
I don't remember in 92 though. I can't remember what happened in 92 with Harry. I don't. But anyway, 91, ends. I ended up getting number 5 on the national tour, and I think I got 5 at the finals too. I don't remember for sure. I mean, I should remember that, but I don't.
It's a pretty amazing effort, though, to put it in perspective. You've got these really, I guess the reality is they're not massive shops, but, PJS, West Coast, Mariner, all these other big guys that are getting money or supported on the tour, going around America, and if not the world, and you're a privateer. You're an accountant working, like there's a fantastic interview with you. I can't remember which race it's after. We'll play it though. And basically you're there quoting that you work 70-hour weeks. You're an accountant. No one, is doing it like you do. Everybody else has got these sort of sponsors and support. And it was just, when I saw that as a younger guy, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Because that's what I could relate to. And I'm sure a lot of other people, not everyone's as lucky to either have the talent or the support behind them.
There is a lot of factory support for those top 4 guys, and there's a lot of guys like myself who pretty much do this on their own. I'm a full-time accountant all year. I work 70-hour weeks, so I can, do this in the summer months. But it pushes me, I want to be in that top category, and whatever it takes, I'm going to put as much heart, as much as I've got into it to do it. I've just about dedicated my life to this sport right now, and all the support I can get, I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, what was funny is I'd go to these tour races, and I'd have these like guys. I remember like the New York race, and I had these guys coming up, yo, you're the accountant jet skier, and I'm like. It was really funny because it was, I think 91.
And the undercut haircut.
Yeah, that goofy haircut that, trying to look like, I don't know who I was trying to look like, Echo and the Bunnyman or something. Yeah, it was really challenging, but, a lot of these kids, it was funny. You had a lot of kids on tour that wanted you to think that they were getting all this money from these people, but in some ways they weren't. It was just dad. They had dad, fun in the whole. There was only like 4 guys. Jeff, Victor, Chris, and Harry that had any money. That were getting any money. And after that, I don't think anybody was getting money. It was all like a dad program, and people didn't even realize that. And then you had.
But that's a dad program's a step up from a
we
U
came
program.
to the 91 tour.
You were a U program, and you were working yourself.
My stuff was pretty wore out.
That's the next round.
I guess so. But I looked at it like I just did it. I had the money. Well, in some ways, I could pay off the credit card bills in the winter. That's usually how it works.
But you have to do the math, and that hurts you because it's your time. Whereas when your kids are spending dad's money, it doesn't hurt as much because they can't put it into perspective about what those hours look like in reality. So kudos to you.
True. Well, I love doing it. It's like it went back. The first time I rode surf, I still loved racing. I still love racing. Freaking 58 and a half years old. I'm still racing 550s against kids. And it's just like, whatever. It's silly. Just let me, but I still love it.
It's brilliant. And I can't wait to get onto that. So the 1991 tour, you've come 5th at the national tour, which is a pretty big result. Was some prize money at the back end of that year?
Yeah, there was, it was, I don't remember how much I got in prize money, maybe $6,000, something like that, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
But a pretty good result, like pro mod, you know, 5th against some of the biggest names in the sport, traveling around the country. Pretty awesome time.
Oh, it was amazing. You know, it was, you know, the circus came to town. It was, you know, it was amazing how many freaking jet skis would show up for these races, you know, and how it was difficult to make a pro final, you know. I can remember, you know, my first year as a pro in 90, probably qualified for 3/4 of the races, but you'd show up and all these guys would show up that were local guys. And it was just kind of like, you know, we would, the guys that were on tour, and then you had guys on tour that didn't make a lot of mains, you know? So it was, there was a lot of guys that raced jet skis. And then, you know, once they changed 92, a lot of guys just got priced out. You know, you had to buy new equipment. You couldn't be competitive on a 550 modified. You know, back then, you know, people were selling 550 PJS Reed mod complete for $1,000. Sure.
Oh, it hurts.
I think Harry was
not anymore.
You know, like my 91 550 that I got number 5 on. I sold it to a guy for $2,500. Actually, a good friend of mine. He rode it a couple times, parked it in a barn, and I bought it back from him 2 years ago for $2,500. Although he took the total loss ignition off, but stock ignition on it. But still, it was nice to get that ski back.
And did that 5th at that level in 91, is that what gave you the boost to get the White Brothers and Good Time Racing on board with the 650? Yeah.
Well, White Brothers helped me out in 91, I think. I think I had some White Brothers support in 91. I got distributor cost on everything, you know, because they were a big distributor. So they were selling me parts at distributor cost. And I had a top 5 contingency program with those guys. And then after that, yeah, they were, you know, similar program contingency. Like I said, I think White Brothers may have been paying my entry fees that next year. So that was, you know, 92 had the potential to be a really good year, and it started out good. And then we had some, you know, in hindsight, probably should have ridden a 750 instead of a 650. But the 650s were a little bit of a known quantity. And, you know,
there weren't many around. Like, I think most of them 750s on the start line, whereas there really wasn't much of a race scene for the 650s, maybe in that small window.
Well, just in that window, you know, you had some 650 mods that were really fast, you know, and even if you look back at John Stevens nearly won a pro mod final at, I think 91. I put the last lap at, I want to say goofy haircut, but it's not, you know, Fort Myers. Trying to look like, it's like 5 miles. I don't know who I was trying to look like. I can't remember what the place was called or something, but he led Jeff on a 650. So back in like 89. It was I think it was 89. Really challenging. And he was riding a 650, and then Emmett Hood, I think he won a national or two on a 650 in 90, because you could ride the 650 in that mod class.
And did you like the hull? You know, the 650, because it was quite different than both the 750 and the 550s.
It was okay, but we had to run 650 cases, you know, in that. We couldn't run the 750 cases. And we'd stuff the stroker cranks in them. Yeah. And Good Times they had built some really fast engines, but we had to have really, really good gas, you know, and ran a lot of timing in those things. And, you know, I don't even know if MSD ignitions existed at the time. I don't think they did. So we had to have really good gas. And I think we were doing pretty good the first few rounds. I think I got a top 3. I think I finished 3rd in Pudding Stone. And then we got to West Virginia. It was like the 4th or 5th round, maybe the 4th round. It's not like now, man. It's not like you got the internet. You look up, you find where you can get race fuel. You know, you're on the road and it's like, the rig we had, we couldn't carry a lot of fuel any one time. So you're pretty much filling up 4 or 5-gallon gas cans. So you get to a town and so you start calling around. And so, you know, somebody said, oh, Billy Bob blends his own race fuel. You get Billy Bob's race fuel, supposedly 116 octane or something.
Yeah.
And several of us, including myself, melted down skis, with Billy Bob's gas. And it just felt like we were playing catch up from that point forward. It's like, okay, that cylinder's dead, but it hurt the rod, but you don't even know the rod's hurt. So you put it back together and then that rod blows. And then it was just like, I ended up doing way too many mod finals on a limited that year, just because it's like I said, it seemed like we were playing catch up. And it was a pretty disappointing year. I ended up finishing 12th. And you had several really good experts move up from 91 to 92 that were already racing 650s. Bill Pointer. So it was a bit of a disappointment, and at the end of 93 or end of 90, was that 92? Yeah. The end of 92, I was kind of like, I switched skis for the world finals to a 750. And,
right. Was that yours or did you get on a sponsor's boat or?
Kawasaki did some kind of deal. And, I ended up buying a 750 for like $2,500 brand new. It's like half price.
Wow. Yeah.
They did some kind of deal. So I got a great deal on a 750. And I think, 750 case, I put another motor together. We had a good ski. We were going down Center's Wash and I was riding it all the time. I got good on that 750. But the week before the finals, Bill Jacobs had us practicing deep water starts. And I got a hernia in my lower abdomen.
Oh, shit.
I couldn't even stand and like lift my right knee up. You stand up and like lift a leg up. I couldn't even do that. And I wasn't even going to race the finals. And I just said, I'm going to give it my best. And I raced the finals in 92, got a second place start in Moto 1 and stayed in second for probably 3 laps, went over the log jump and bobbled, had to drag a foot. And it hurt so bad, I almost just had to pull off. And I finished Moto 2, but the finishes weren't good. 93 came along and I was still riding 750s, but it was trying to think. We had some fast equipment and ran out of money about halfway through the tour.
Was this with a new sponsor? Was this with JetLab? JW?
Nah, JW didn't come on till 94.
Right.
93, we had MRD and fuel injection and things. Had some fast skis.
Did you like that? I mean, you're got an extensive background in wrenching and you know your stuff. What's your professional opinion of an MRD fuel injection, which is mechanical? It was
really good in some ways, but the drive drove off the front of the crankshaft. And if you didn't have perfect cases and a perfect crank, sometimes the drive spline would, I had like a mag cover just like break the whole mag cover, when a set of cases got wore out. And, but it was good. I had a fast ski. I remember Dave was at the Pudding Stone race and, I whole shot a qualifier and won a qualifier. And then I think I got second one of those finals. And Dave came up to me and asked me, cause they had a problem with the skis losing prime where the ski be on the track and all of a sudden it just lose prime. And a lot of these guys would have the hose right up on the X2s and they'd have to blow in the hose to keep the system. Well, I came up with some means of keeping the system primed. Normally, I don't remember how I did it. I think I made it so the tank had to stay pressurized. And I think he normally didn't want the tanks to be pressurized. I don't remember exactly how I did it anymore, but I managed to make it so it never could lose prime. And it was freaking brutal acceleration. It was really good. So it was good, but
you mentioned just some of the bad things was one of the pitfalls of the MRD. What was some of the advantages? Was it better snap, better responsiveness?
Well, the carburetors, we didn't have all these trick carburetors. There was Novi, I don't think existed yet.
Was GRS around then?
Green Racing carbs? Yeah. I think he was still modifying those 3-screw Mikunis, 2-screw Mikunis. I I don't think everybody, that square body Mikuni, I don't think in 93 people were really modifying those carburetors yet, other than just a taper bore. But even a really good, a sorted out 44 that we would steal off Superjets or steal off Yamahas, it didn't run nearly as good as an MRD injection. But hell, the same year, I had a second 750 with EFI from Triton.
Really? Is that what Triton was? It was an EFI system, but they were the electronic side.
Yeah. So I'd be down the water with a laptop, tuning that fuel injection, and then I had MRD on another ski in 93.
Wow. This is I've totally stumbled across this. I thought it was only Victor Sheldon that had the IRS fuel injection system, Jeff Jacobs that had his own PJS in-house IndyCar setup, secret squirrel stuff, and now you've got one. Tell us more.
I had an EFI and a 93 750, and
wow,
the MRD ran a little bit better, than the EFI.
Yeah.
So
was that? Did they come to you, or did you source them out? How did the whole system work? Because it would have been brand new technology, not proven, pretty on edge.
I think I was good with computers, the only way you could make that fuel injection work is if it was a DOS based tuning mechanism, so
yep.
you
dir / semicolon did the drives.
No, I take that back. No, we had it looked a lot like Lotus 123,
okay.
kind of spreadsheet. So being an accountant, I was extremely familiar with the spreadsheet. So I think Ron Gitlin, I think he might have reached out to me at some point in time because he knew that, this accountant guy must know how to run spreadsheets. If you can put spreadsheets together, you can tune fuel injection. So, you'd literally take the thing out, with a baseline map, you give it a run, and I would increase rich or lean the whole system. Usually go rich first.
And are these all just numbers in a cell?
Numbers in a cell. You could do a complete map format where you could take and enrich in everything to 110% of what you had.
So you're putting in a formula to change this as the curve went up.
Well, actually, initially you would just change, you change the whole map, and then you'd watch your tachometer, and then you just feel acceleration. Okay, what did we get? Did we get more RPM? No, we lost RPM, but it's accelerating better. So let's go back. Let's take the high RPM fuel numbers and let's drop these back 10%. We just richened the whole map. It accelerates better, but we lost top end. So let's drop it's probably getting boring, but let's drop.
I think this is the best part. I love this.
Let's drop the high RPM fuel numbers 10% and get us back to where we were, and then keep playing with the numbers, and then, set your low speed, set your, like starting line fuel, and then you could really dial it in. But the interesting thing is the MRD, when you'd sort out the MRD, it would pull harder than the EFI did. And,
right.
And then it seems like.
Was that a problem with the EFI, or was it maybe the not the sensors, the injectors?
The other hiccup we had with the EFI, when we really had a motor that had a lot of horsepower potential, it had a really high fuel demand. And there was a point where we couldn't feed it enough fuel. We could not give it enough fuel. We had injectors from I think the injectors were from a Cadillac Eldorado with the injectors we had, and we could not.
So this wasn't a kit that they made special. This was a Bitzer that Triton had there.
This is a kit that they made, but if you had a motor that didn't have a ton of horsepower or horsepower potential with a really high fuel demand, it was great. It was really good. But I think my real high compression, big timing motor, I couldn't feed it enough fuel, and I think that's the reason. The reason why I ended up not running it. It was a little bit foggy, but I think I couldn't put enough fuel to it. Really, we probably needed 2 injectors. We had enough of a fuel pump, but I think we talked about putting 2 injectors to it. But
2 injectors in each cylinder.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So you could get enough fuel, and I don't think we could get fuel to it. It would just run lean. You know, you'd be wide open and the thing would be lean. And I think that's with MRD, it was like the sky the limit. It was like pouring a 5-gallon gas can in a carburetor. So you could get enough fuel to it with the MRD. And
so you never got a race with the EFI. You were just sort of doing testing and training.
I think I did, but I wish I could remember for sure. I know I was going back and forth between the two. I had 2 skis, one with one, the other. And
were they they would supply you with a system and then it was up to you to tune it, or were they helping you? Were they, down at the beach or down at the water sort of working with you to tune it out?
They were in Boulder, Colorado. So he gave me a baseline map and I kind of ran with
a baseline for that altitude though, because aren't Colorado's up there, or was it baseline for sea level?
Yeah, but it was sophisticated enough to have atmospheric tester.
That's cool.
Adjuster for atmospheric pressure. So that would adjust the whole thing, based on your atmospheric pressure. So it was sophisticated enough to do some self-tuning. You
said you're a numbers man and you like your tech. For me, I'm just nerding out listening to your explanation of this. Were you in your element with this new technology thinking, wow, this is going to give me an edge and I really love, because not everyone could work on computers back then, surely.
Yeah, shit. You're just trying stuff. It's like, everybody was looking for an edge. How fast can I make this thing? How much can it accelerate? What can we do to this? It's like, it was kind of rudimentary, the testing I did, but it, used a tachometer, and that this lake by my house, there was 2 big steel perimeter buoys that surrounded the dam area. And I had this little company called Water Strike Marine sold like a speedometer kit. It was a little thing that hooked up on the bottom of the hull with a little hose that came off it. And it went up to their little unit. And that thing had, I don't remember if that had the tachometer in it or not. I don't remember. I think it did. I think a tachometer and speedometer. And I would kind of roll up to, like a starting line situation. I'd roll up to one of the buoys and just stab the throttle and buoy to buoy. How fast will this thing go from one buoy to the next? And that was kind of like how I gauged acceleration.
How did you gauge, or how did the system gauge speed? Because you wouldn't have GPS back then.
Well, that was a speedometer. So it would tell you how fast you were going by the next buoy. And all I really cared about was, I would look at top speed, but really I was more concerned with how fast we were going from this buoy to this buoy. And, if I had the ski that was going to, the most amount of speed from that second buoy meant that, that was pretty much as good as it was going to get. Most of the race is won or lost, in the first 100 feet,
And were you relying on mostly numbers because it always felt fast, or when you felt fast, you really understood? Like you're like, wow, this on my body, it's pulling me hard.
There, sometimes you can have skis that, when I started racing for Riva in 95, there was times where things didn't necessarily feel really fast, just really smooth, but they were really fast. And sometimes deceiving to have a ski that just goes, might feel like, oh, this thing's a rocket. But the reality is a lot of times when skis feel like that, the impeller's too small, and it would be a better ski if you put a bigger impeller in it, had it pull a little mellower. And most of the time, they're faster. Now that was until, like these GP1s, or this GP class. I picked up a GP1 last July and raced it, at the World Finals, one of the Matsura skis. Yeah. And that one I have went just under 70 miles an hour with a freaking stock motor and accelerates like a missile. So it's like, that thing was, I can't believe how hard those things pull and how fast they go. It's just, it's amazing. Anyway, we'll go back to old school, I guess.
So with the, just before we move on from the EFI, was that company Triton, were they making EFI systems for other engines and then they turned their hand to jet skis, or were they just jet ski engines and that was their forte?
They were like a military contractor company. They built parts for a lot of, I think, military contracts. And I think the owner, was a jet ski guy, and he was a sharp guy. It's like he built this fuel injection system. It was basically a car system. It had a fuel pump from a car, and it seemed like it had a lot of extra wiring that didn't need to be there.
I was going to say, with the looms going everywhere, why is this, that, and that other?
The loom wasn't super long, but it was a loom that was really designed for a jet ski. But man, it was just a lot of wires in this thing, man. You had this bundle like this big, going from the fuel pump and then going to a control unit. So I had this control unit for the EFI, another control unit for the Jetnetics ignition.
Where did all that live? On top of the tank or above?
No, it was all like
box?
firewall. I think I had a piece of aluminum like this long, with this Jetnetics ignition bolted to one place, the EFI controller to the next place, and a couple of batteries in this thing. And, people would look under the hood of this thing and just be like, holy Christ,
Yeah, that'd be intimidating just looking at it, not knowing how the whole thing works.
It's just, there's a lot of stuff. It wasn't, the ignition system wasn't, or the fuel injection system wasn't an ignition system too. Those were two completely separate entities.
Wow. Do you have any pictures from back then of the setup, or it wasn't really on your mind back then?
I don't. I got a picture of the jet ski and that's about it.
Yeah. Did you ever get to see your competitors' EFI, like Victor's IRS and the PJS of Jeff?
I saw Jeff's quite a bit because I was there, but I never saw Victor's stuff.
Right. So did yours, as most people have seen Jeff's, it's pretty famous, that EFI system. It's quite a low profile manifold. So really it's just a manifold with the injectors going in on the bottom of it, and then a K&N air filter on the top with a sensor. Does yours have...
Similar to that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because the IRS were more of a traditional, it actually took up about the same space as a carburetor. It was when the fuel rail sort of went into the side, the manifold was it sort of went from the reed straight up.
Yeah, I seem to remember the Jetnetics one was, like a side draft setup like the MRD was,
Right.
Like it was a similar setup. And I think the injectors were on the top. I seem to remember it being that way.
That's cool, actually, because then it'd be a direct injection straight from the top, straight into the cylinder.
Yeah. Now, now the World Finals, the 94 World Finals, when I raced the Runabout, that had Triton's fuel injection on it, the EFI, that ski that I raced at the finals.
Oh, wow.
The Runabout.
Were you the only one that was were you sponsored by them, or did you find out and purchase one retail?
Triton?
Yeah, yep.
No, I never purchased one. Ron gave one to test and try, and I think I gave the whole system back to him, I think, at some point. Or maybe, this sounds kind of funny, I think that system is the one that ended up on my 94 Wave Raider that I raced at the World Finals.
Oh, so it did get going after a bit of toing and froing.
Yeah, it worked. I don't know how things got sorted out, but 94 when I raced Runabouts, I should circle back a little bit because some things transpired between 93 and 4 for me to end up on a Runabout.
Yeah, shoot. So, you got to 93, you're on the Good Times White Brothers 650 SX, and then you said
that was 92. 93.
Right.
93 was White Brothers, that was still my sponsor in 93, and that was a 750. And that's the year that went around with the fuel injection, the MRD fuel injection and the Triton fuel injection. That was 93.
Right. Then what happened? So you went from stand-ups and now Runabouts are starting to hit the scene.
I was riding the 750s, and I had arthritis. I had a problem with my left knee, and it was the thing would swell up like a freaking cantaloupe by the end of the weekend. And 93 was a tough year, and with equipment and a nagging knee injury that I just couldn't get ahead of. And it's like there was a couple times on tour, and back then I was flying into all the races. I wasn't on tour in 93. 92, I was on the road most of the time, but 93 was completely flying in and out. I had started an advertising company. I was running that and leaving Friday, or in some cases, red-eyeing it in Saturday to race Sunday to fly back out Sunday. And I had a guy on the road traveling with the Fitzpatricks, who had a motorhome and a trailer. I had one ski on the road, and basically there wasn't a lot of practice. There was a lot of work in that year, and I couldn't really practice because of the knee injury. So in 93, kind of out of money, the business I was doing, it wasn't working out that well. Really tight on money, going into debt because I'm flying back and forth. I got a guy on the road trying to keep things going. And then World Finals comes along, broke everything. The rod through the side of one good motor, and just had a really dismal World Finals. I didn't even qualify. Broke one motor in one qualifier, broke the other motor in another qualifier. And that was it. And I remember driving home from Havasu with my we weren't married yet. It was my girlfriend at the time. And just said, I'm done jet ski racing. This is it. I can't do this anymore. And she's like, yeah, sure. I've heard that before. So anyway, a week later, JW calls me from Jet Lab, and he wants to go runabout racing. And I had known JW forever. And I was the guy that, 10 o'clock at night, Saturday night, I'd be working on a jet ski, and JW would be he just kind of troll the pits to see who still was up. And he would stop and shoot the shit for me for a while. And he comes and calls me up in 94, and he goes, his Oklahoma accent, Fitzgerald, we're going runabout racing. And I'm like, JW, we ain't going runabout racing. I go, how am I going to go runabout racing? He goes, I'm going to pay for everything. So I go, okay, JW. I go, this is how much I need to make to really go runabout racing. So JW says, okay. And I get a check in the mail.
Wow.
And
that was easy.
And it was like, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to race runabouts in 1994. So I end up on an XIR Kawasaki.
So they're those limited edition, only 500 were made, weren't they? Or 250. They're a race only from Kawasaki kind of a deal.
Yeah, I called that one the career ender.
Oh, no.
Jet ski.
Oh, shit.
It was a well-conceived idea, but the ones that PJS had were about 150 pounds lighter.
Right. Weren't they carbon fiber or something? Or
yeah, the production ones, the hulls were this thick.
Yeah, right.
And I took a motor that would go almost 60 miles an hour in my stand-up, and it would go 49 miles an hour in that XIR. It was like, I'm like, you're kidding me, right? And I didn't make a single main event until we got to rough water, until we got out in the surf somewhere. And then I started having some good weekends. And we get near the, and JW, I was on the road with the JW van, although it caught on fire at one point in time. And we're in a U-Haul van for a little while. And JW was a great guy. He really was, and he came from oil money. And I don't think he really needed to race jet skis. He didn't even need to have a jet ski shop, but he just was a great guy and really got behind me. And so we get to the end of the tour in 94, and I'd finished 18th. Okay. I wanted to race a carbon fiber hull, for the finals. And I'm not going to say who it was over at Kawasaki. We're still actually pretty good friends. And he said, well, if you want a carbon fiber hull, you're going to have to pay for it. And literally like minutes later, Steve Lawler calls me and he goes, hey, you finished 18th on the tour, right? And they were just looking for anybody they could put on a wave raider to race the World Finals.
Yeah.
He goes, I've got a race hull raider I want you to try. He met me at Castaic Lake, and I rode that thing. And I said, if I could have ridden this on tour, I would have won the championship. I mean, it was really good.
Yeah.
So my next phone call was Kawasaki to say, because I had a
I had some help from Kawasaki. And anyway, it was one of those deals where it's kind of like, I'm going to burn this bridge and I may never get to race for anybody again if this doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
But I was in it to win. I didn't care. So I ended up having to take all the stuff that I had at the house back to Kawasaki and didn't make any friends there. And got on that Yamaha and spent the next 7 weeks, I think, just working with Scott Watkins and Merle Varner. Lawler, I was staying at Lawrence Machine. They have a condo there. I was staying with those guys.
Isn't this what dreams are made of, though? You've battled it out for years. You've learnt your craft. It's now sort of petering out with not because of you, but because of just the situation with Kawasaki. And the next thing, you've got a rival manufacturer. You've got all these hitters like Scott Watkins and these boys that you've known and the industry's known for years as well. Must have been so exciting.
Oh, it was wild. I was at the Yamaha facility from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. and just making sponsons and playing with keel and playing with chines and motor setups and pump setups and just setups. The initial motor that went in it was a Tim Tynan motor, which was a really solid motor. Tim does a good job. It was a really solid motor. And I had the Triton Engineering guys working on a secret weapon to race at the finals. So we practiced with the Tynan motor and it ran good. And we got the ski really good. That Raider, there's a few pictures of that thing floating around. It was an orange Raider with a white top deck, big JetLab sticker on it. And that ski it worked amazing. You just had to hold the throttle wide open the whole time. Because if you lifted, it would just try to turn around. And but that's how I set it up. At the time I was really strong and I could ride those 785s just pinned the whole time. And I just said, I'm going to make this thing work good one way. And if somebody wants to joyride it around the track, they're going to hurt themselves. And so that ski worked good. Ron shows up with his guy. We yanked the motor out, throw his fuel injected motor in. It probably was the fuel injection that I had on my old stand-up, and took it down, and it was a freaking missile. It was a really good ski. And it pushed a lot of water, so it wasn't quite as fast as some of the Sea-Doo stuff. And so we go to the finals, and it was tough to qualify for a main. Tommy, I think they ran 2 qualifiers. I think I got third in the first qualifier and qualified for Mod 1. Mod 2, we had some problem. I don't remember what, but we had some problem and didn't make the second qualifier. So we had to ride an LCQ. So before the LCQ,
last chance qualifier.
Right. Steve comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, did you see us in your LCQ?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Sorry, man. At least you made one of the mains, because you had Bo DePriest, who had just won the championship. You had John Stevens, who won the championship the year before, Larry Rippenkroger. It was like stacked. It was stacked with good
names.
Guys. And
yeah.
I look at Steve, I'm like, I'm going to win this race. And Steve just thought I was freaking crazy. So, and I was, I really enjoyed riding the ski, and I was really confident. So I go to the starting line. I got like a 5th place start and made use, literally, I think the first split track, I popped out in second. And Bo had already made like a half a straightaway lead. Now, he had a lot of speed, but I don't think his ski, I think he changed his setup from the finals. And his ski...
Was this the highest displacement at the time? The 780s? They were the big runabouts, even though today they're kind of nice and light and practically sport boats.
But the 785 was the biggest and fastest at the time. So it's a 5-lap qualifier. I think it's 5 or 6. And Bo's out in front. So his ski doesn't turn as good as mine, but it's fast in the straightaway. So we get in the tight section, and I would just dog him. I'd be right on top of him, and he just cutting everything super tight. And then we end up in the split track, and we were swapping split tracks, and each lap we'd come out side by side, and he'd just pull me down the straightaway, one of those laps, I was a little ahead of him, and he pulled me down the straight. And I'm like, the last lap, and I didn't have to do this. I could have got second and qualified, and we were pretty far ahead of everybody else. And I'm just like, I don't care. I want to win. So we're going down the front straight, and I think Bo is going to go inside to protect the inside line. So I go to slingshot for the outside. If he would have gone outside, I would have been screwed, but he went inside. I slingshot to the outside, hook everything perfect, pop out a full boat length in front of him. And I hear him coming, and I just say, fuck it. And I just move over on him.
Chopped him.
And
closed the door.
Chopped him and bumped him a little bit. And I won the race. And then after the race, he pulls his helmet off, comes running up to me. But that wasn't my first rodeo with someone pulling their helmet off and running up to me. He was not happy. We had words. And I think I mentioned something about blocking, and he knew we all know when we're blocking somebody.
Absolutely. Put him on the hip. Yeah.
I had a ski that turned really good, but just wasn't as fast. And he had a fast ski. So anyway, I won that, and Dave Bamdis came to me after the race and says, after that, you got to ride for Riva if you want it for next year.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do in the finals. So I think I got third overall in Moto 1, and then in Moto 2 we broke the drive shaft.
Okay.
At the finals.
Well, that's not a use. So that's okay.
So it just is. It is what it was. And then I in December I moved to Florida. Lived in Florida for a couple of years. Rode for Riva.
How does that work? Was JW still looking after you, or is that it? Like, you've sort of shaken hands and said thanks for the help?
The deal with Riva was, you kind of had your own box van. I had a salary from Riva.
Oh, it's a great deal. You had to take it.
Yeah, I had a salary. I had skis. I had a helper. It was an amazing deal. And JW, said, look, I'll pay for all your entries and I'll pay for your fuel on the road. So I basically had a American Express card from JW, and I still ran JW JetLab stickers on those Riva skis. If you look at those Riva skis, there's a JetLab sticker in the front. And which was, that was pretty kind of Dave to let me do that. Dave Bamdis owns Riva, and we're still good friends.
He's built a brilliant business. It's still going strong today.
Absolutely. So JW paid for that. He flew into some of the races, and then I think he got into some trouble. Anyway, that's another story. Anyway, so that's kind of how that transpired. And I ended up over at Riva, and pretty much all my deals that year were all contingency deals. But because I had such a successful national tour in '95 and World Finals, I made a lot of money that year. And
that would have been nice.
I think in '95 and '6, I think I made over $100,000 racing jet skis both those years, which was pretty amazing.
That's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah, I was like, couldn't believe it. It's like, wow. If these guys only knew all they had to do was feed me, I would have done this.
like a circus animal. Just feed me. That's all you need.
Just feed me, you just feed me and give me a place to stay. I'll go race.
It's testament to the strength of the sport at the time, though. If they can afford to pay, and you were successful, no doubt, but afford to pay their racer $100,000 a year, it means that from the business end, sales are being made from watercraft and modifications and whatnot.
That wasn't from any one source. That was from 20 sources.
Right.
Yeah. From 20 sources. I got some kind of salary from Riva. I don't know. I think it was for $40,000 a year, maybe.
It's pretty good for back
something
then.
Like that.
Mid-90s.
Yeah, I think that, and then you put the JW money in there, and then that was the gross. I think the net. Who knows what the net was, but that was the gross, and still it was jet ski racing. I was kind of like, you kidding me? Really? I remember my old man thinking, how much did you make this year? And he was like jet ski racing. He couldn't believe it.
Can you tell us a bit about that transition from when you were working those 70-hour weeks as an accountant, and then how did that work with your bosses? Because I know that you're trying to juggle everything, a life, wrenching, racing, a career. How did that work? I remember you telling me a story about flexible work arrangements.
Well, I worked at Arthur Andersen. I didn't tell people that I was racing jet skis, because you really weren't supposed to have these kind of professional hobbies. So I remember one time I was on an audit job, and the manager or the partner comes in, and somehow he sees my hands, and they still look the same, big calluses on my hands. And he's like, Jesus, what's up with your hands? I'm like, and I'm like, oh, I just, I've been remodeling my house and doing a lot of yard work. I didn't want to tell him. So you get this interview from the 91 World Finals, that I'm an accountant, blah, blah, just that interview I did. And I'm in the office, and I get a page to go see the managing partner of the firm. Now, the funny thing is the managing partner of the firm was actually my mentor. When you started at Arthur Andersen, they would give you a mentor. And at the time, he wasn't the managing partner, but he just happened to got promoted to managing partner. So I walk into his office, and he pops a beta tape in, and it's that interview. And he's like, what is this? And I'm like, this is, this is my hobby. And he goes, looks like a hell of a lot more than a hobby. And he goes, can you make any money at this? I'm like, well, if I could devote more time to it, I probably could. And he's like, well, what would it take to do it? I'm like, well, I pretty much have to take entire summers off, and then probably take, more chunks of time off to be able to train and do things. So put together like a per diem deal where it's like I was doing per diem work and not technically working for them anymore. So, if a client needed somebody to come in and put together put together all the requirements for their audit, I would do that.
How unique for back then, because he must have really taken a shining to you as a person and liked you to do this, because flexible work arrangements weren't as common as they are today.
It wasn't, but I think it was one of those things where I was getting outstanding reviews, and I think they didn't want me to leave, but he always said, no matter what, you always have a job here. But unfortunately, Enron, that was that Enron scandal thing, and that firm went down. But the sad thing is they got completely exonerated after the firm had shut down. But whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily want to go back and be an accountant again. It was a means to an end. You know what I mean? But
bit of security though. You've got a qualification. You now have experience, and you've ticked those boxes, and which is a lot that most people have. So you've got that to fall back on if everything goes pear-shaped, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. All these kids that raced, these kids that were racing jet skis that, some of them were young and they were going to go to college, but some of them were racing. And when the racing stopped, it's like, what are you going to do for a living? And, a lot of those guys kind of fell into that, what are you going to do for a living? And, I never had to worry about that. I already had, if I want to be an accountant, I just be an accountant again, make a good living. So, flexible work schedule. And then, started this company in 93 or something, message board advertising. We were selling ad space on the border of a Raceable Ink memo board. And then to local businesses, and then we'd mail these boards out. And it was a good concept. Then we had a big earthquake.
Sorry, how did that work? The boards would go up. Where would they go? On the side of sports stadiums or something?
On a refrigerator.
Oh, right.
They're magnetic. They would go on a refrigerator. So you'd sell like 20 ads around the perimeter, and you'd mail them out to these houses, and these local businesses would pay, pay for the ad space.
And the calendar was in the middle, or something that you could use?
Just erasable ink, like you could put notes on.
Ah, yeah.
It came with a erasable ink pen, and it didn't pan out that well, and it was kind of like, I almost wish I would have stuck with the per diem stuff, because that was when the money got really tight. And that was 93.
Was that an interest in advertising and marketing, or more so the business side that you liked, that was attracting you?
A little bit of both,
Yeah.
I always wanted to own a business. Really, I wanted to, probably wanted to have a dealership at some point in time, but, having a dealership and being a, wannabe professional jet ski racer weren't that conducive.
I hope you're enjoying our chat with Dangerous Dan so far. Keep listening to hear all about how the World Finals race unfolded against some very stiff competition. Now, as we all know, the World Finals is the culminating event of the jet ski racing calendar. And as such, once the flag is dropped and the water is settled, it's inevitably time to put the ski away for the winter, where it's forgotten about until the first few days of spring. If this sounds like you, and you're not one to wrench on next season's campaign-winning rocket ship, then it might be worth protecting your pride and joy with a well-fitted cover. Whether it's a light cover, needed while stowing your jet ski in the garage, or a heavy-duty edition for weather and sun protection outside, we have an option to suit your ski. Simply head to VintageJetSki.com to choose your colour, material and model of cover to fit your ski and give it the protection it needs this winter. Plus, you can save $20 on every purchase over $200. All you need to do is use the code RIDEBYDAY at checkout. Now let's get back to Dan. And then what happened after that? So you were now with Riva Yamaha and you're enjoying yourself, you're racing and having fun. And then you've still got in the back of your mind, you want to be a business owner.
When I started at Riva, Dave brought me out and this 1200 class was brand new. So they, really wanted somebody that, Dave was hanging around a little bit at the Yamaha facility and saw, me working on these things. And, that's kind of what that took, kind of like a tireless work ethic to work the development of this. And Dave wanted to build parts. So I got out there initially, like almost New Year's Day or something, 1995. And for the first couple months, there wasn't a hell of a lot to do. We didn't have hulls yet. We were still waiting on hulls. So I ended up selling units on the floor for Dave and did that until we started getting units. And then we started putting more time into the units and put the 1200, put the 785 together. Initial 1200 had stock ignition in it, ported. It ran good, stroker crank and stuff. And we were about, 3 days from the first World Cup race, or have we already raced one? I think it was right before the first World Cup race. And I wanted to, and Gary Pomanowski got this MSD ignition. It was brand new, 3-channel ignition. And there was a little bit of, it was kind of like, do we try this? We don't have hardly any time. And Gary wanted to, I don't think Tim did. And I think we ended up just saying, fuck it, let's try it. But, and it took the best part of, we literally didn't finish it. It wasn't running until like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And we were racing the next day in Islamorada. And we were in Pompano. We took it down to the lake in the dark. It was this lake that was right next to the freeway. So we had the freeway lights. And we did some radar passes, and it was freaking fast as shit and accelerated like a missile. And it was like, holy crap. So we get down to Islamorada about 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, I think. And it wasn't completely finished. Gary and I got in the back of we rolled it out, put up the easy up, and we worked until we finished about right at dawn. And it was like, well, it's too late to get any sleep now. So we both were up all night. And I won on that ski handily and race 75. I don't even know what I did on 75, but that's that Splash magazine cover that I have, that was that race. And
right. I'll put that up so people can see it.
So there's a Splash magazine cover with me on a yellow Raider, and it's and that was from that Islamorada race. And I think Jeff Ames had taken that picture. He was down there.
Awesome.
I didn't end up winning that World Cup that year on the 1200. I think I blew a drive shaft coupler.
Ooh.
And something else failed too, but I can't remember what. But it turns out,
how do you blow one of them? Because you've got the they sort of interlock each of the.
Well, what we didn't realize until literally a year later, or maybe by the end of the tour, we figured it out. But the hulls flexed so much that the engine would flex up and down, and it would wreck the couplers. So we would have to change the drive coupler after every race. Literally, after every race, we'd have to change them. And those couplers, like the main events, were like 8 laps. I think they're 8 laps. And the coupler would be like almost in pieces by the end of 8 laps.
What about the drive shaft or the crank? Are they all okay?
That would be okay.
Yeah.
It'd be okay. And I could feel them starting to go, and you'd have to start backing off the throttle. You'd have to start.
Your couplers are billet aluminium, so they're probably not. They're good, but they're not.
Well, they're
bulletproof.
It was the rubber dampeners that were blowing apart.
Not the actual. They weren't damaged. The billet.
No, the rubber dampers would blow apart.
Right.
So we would take, and Mike Hodges and I got where we could do one of those couplers in like 5 minutes. 4 motor mounts, slide the motor forward, and you could hang it on the very edge of the motor mounts, pull undo the clamp that held the exhaust and just drop the hose down, slide it forward, pull the coupler, drop a coupler in, slide it back, throw the bolts back in.
Wow, pit stop.
We could do it in like 5 minutes. And so we make it through the tour. We win the national tour. That's a story in itself, that last round. It was
tell us more.
It was there was a lot of races, a lot of kind of carnage. I remember one time we were in Santa Barbara, and Rusty, he had a really fast freaking Sea-Doo. Bullet, his dad, was Bullet, and they had put together a really fast Sea-Doo, and that thing beat me to the first turn. One problem we had with the Raider is the pump that it would cavitate on the start, and I had to be really careful feeding the throttle in. If I got on it too hard, it would just burn. And I think I did that Santa Barbara Moto 1. And Rusty hole shots, and for some reason he kind of jumped the start, and I think he thought it was going to be red flagged, or he thought he saw a red flag. So we come around to the front straightaway, and I was racing. I was going for the pass, and Rusty, I think he thought that it was a red flag, and he kind of just started fading over. All of a sudden, I'm like, shit. I bump Rusty, and Rusty falls on my ski and is like laying on my ski like this. So I pick Rusty up, and he was just a skinny kid. And I just picked him up by the back of his vest and had to just set him off the jet ski and just keep on going.
Did you have words after it, or was it just like, what did he say? What was his issue?
It was one of those weird things. It was like, I was sorry, and he was sorry. He goes, fuck, I thought they'd red flag the race. I didn't know. And I'm like, it's like one of those things. But, there was other times where we had words where, we bumped into each other. It's just the nature of the beast. You bump into guys, and sometimes you have words, but then you're drinking and partying with them that night.
That's cool.
So nothing was ever long-lived. And I don't think anybody at that level was doing anything malicious.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There was some bumping, but nobody was trying to freaking kill anybody. We had to race with each other the next day. So we come down to the very last round, and Derek punctured. I think he was 3 points up or something. It was really close right at the end. We had a coupler failure somewhere where it didn't make it the whole race. And, I think I had one DNF in the tour, and it just, points were tight. So I'm going down to the starting line in Denver. Well, actually, I'll back up a little bit. The way it worked out is I had won Moto 1, and Dustin had finished second in Moto 1. Derek from Kawasaki finished third. And I felt like I had a pretty good crack at winning Moto 2, but I thought it would be a little safer cushion, because if Derek got second, he would win the championship. So I really wanted to be in that second. I could get second in that race, and Dustin, I would still win the overall. I don't remember how it worked out exactly, but I would still win the overall in Dallas. Dustin would get second, and Derek would get third if I won or Dustin won, or I got second and Dustin got second. But I wanted to be kind of in control of Derek. And I was afraid that if I was leading and Dustin was in second, it just left, for me personally, it left too much in question. It's like I could be out in front and I had no control over Derek Punchard on Kawasaki. But if Dustin hole shot it, he would win the race, and then I could kind of control Derek through the split course and block Derek at different points and manipulate Derek better. So we go in the pits, and Dustin and I weren't getting along real good in the 1200 class. You know, he was kind of set up to get third overall, no matter what happened. And the last thing that he was willing to do, and by good reason, you know, I'm not going to help this fucking guy out, so Dan could win the championship. So Dustin had been kind of slow on the gate that whole day. We were getting late in the day. They're running out of time. And I made the crack to Dustin after his blaster race. I'm like, what are you doing on the start? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, they're trying to get through these races. You should be jumping the start. Just go. I go, the minute the thing goes sideways, they're throwing the band. So, I think by me kind of making fun of how he was doing in the start, that it kind of got in his head, and he's like, I should need to be jumping this. He was really young. He was only like 16. Yeah. So I think he was just a kid. And I think he realized, goes, shit, I need to be jumping this thing. So we get to the starting line. He jumps the start, and he got ahead of me, which was perfect. I kind of slid across his wake, and Derek was coming on the outside. Dustin hole shots. He goes to the inside, or he went to the outside. I shoot to the inside. He comes across and he sees me. I had him beat. He sees me, and I just went like this with my head. He pulls in front of me. I pull right in front of Derek. And then we get into the other part of the course. I back off and kind of block Derek through that part of the course and let Dustin kind of run away a little bit, get some ground on us. And then we get back into the straightaway and go down the back straight. And the one split was slower than the other. I think the inside split was quite a bit slower, or vice versa. So I basically reel in Dustin on the split, get right behind him at the exit, but I'm kind of hiding so he can't see me. Derek would pop out of the split and fall in behind us. And we just did this the entire race. I'd back off in the other portion. Derek would lose some ground. And then, and the way it was set up, it wasn't like, there wasn't a place that Derek could like dive in on me and get me. The way they had those buoys, it's like there was one line and one good line. And he was just kind of at the mercy of my pace through there. And I just did that the whole, 8 or 10 laps. Dustin won the moto. I got the overall, and I won the championship. And, Derek got second overall. But the funniest part was we were going down to the starting line. We were going down to the starting line, and the Kawasaki guys were holding up shirts that said, Derek Punchard, national champion. The whole pit crew was holding up those shirts. And I gave him a little wave. I gave him a little wave, and with a little bit of a comment.
Yeah, a little bit of fuck you.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's an excellent explanation. I was loving the reliving of that race.
So it was definitely it was one of those ones that's like, okay, you gotta run this a certain way. And I thought in my head I was going to run it like that. Very seldom do I ever go into a race thinking how I'm going to run a race. Usually I just let things fall and come up with something, but it had to be kind of contrived for it to all work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And making sure that everybody was in their right positions. And a lot of things you can't control. It seems like some of it fell your way, and then you were able to execute the plan quite well.
It did. Darren, Dustin jumped the start like he should have. He got out of the.
You led him down that. You gave him the idea though of how to do it. I love that. And he's just a young kid. He probably didn't understand what you were doing.
So it was like, it worked out, and he was happy. Won Moto 2, everybody except Derek was happy. And then,
achieved your mission.
And then the world finals, we had, we taken, we had done a little bit of work to the ski, but the Kawasaki, they came out with a really good ski for the finals. But the finals, we were going like some long race, like 15 laps or something. Really long race. And that coupler on the national tour would barely freaking make 10 laps. And Steve and Tim Judge and Lawler, they say before the race, it's like, hey, just they anticipated the coupler breaking and the drive shaft whipping out of the thing, and I just told the guys, I go, I'm still going to win it. I go, I'll get this coupler to make it. And by that time, luckily we didn't have a super rough day. So, what would wipe the coupler out was, I think by that time I knew that the hull flex was part of it. And if I really swept turns and didn't put a lot of side G load in the ski, it would help the coupler. And they had a really wide course. So in my head, I thought, I think I could ride this boat and not stab it into the corners, but really sweep the corners, keep the side G load as low as possible. Cause I think that was the motor trying to go like this, and just motion of the motor, and try to kind of work the throttle in relation to it. Anyway, so Moto 1, qualify for the final. And I think I'm on the pole on the inside. Derek's on the pole on the outside. We go into the first turn, and, we're both going like, I don't know, 75 miles an hour or something. And
wow.
We collide. We collide in the first turn. And he's sweeping across, and I had no room. And I'm trying to tuck it into the red buoy, and he kind of pinched me. I was going to either hit him or hit the buoy. And I tried to tuck in as best I could, but at that speed, it doesn't take much of a bump to just throw everything into shit. So I bumped him, his boat hooked, I flew, and there's a video somewhere. I did 2 somersaults before I even hit the water. And I hit the water. I tried to get under the water as best I could, and I got hit in the head by somebody. And I end up popping up. I can't see, everything's really blurry, but I can see yellow. And I knew that if you were the cause of a red flag, a lot of times the rule was you weren't allowed to start the next race. So
right.
I started swimming for my ski, so it's like, I'm not laying in the water trying to milk a red flag out of this. So I'm trying to get to my ski so I can race. I can barely see the damn thing. So the course marshal comes over, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." So he grabs me my ski. Derek's floating on his back, just floating in the water. So I get on the ski, I ride to the starting line, and I used to do this thing where I'd come up to the starting line and I just whip the thing backwards, and then just turn the motor off. The thing, they just lift the band, and I just go under the band. Well, I get to the starting line, I'm like 20 feet away. I could barely see it. So I just turn the motor off and just kind of coasting, and Mike Hodges goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I can't see."
In shock, yeah.
And he's, "What do you mean you can't see?" I'm like, "I can't see that buoy right there. It's just a fuzzy blur, and I could barely see colors." And he goes, "Well, you can't race." I'm like, "What are they doing with Derek?" And they go, "They're out there and putting him on a backboard." I go, "It's going to take them 20 minutes to get this race going. Let's see how I'm feeling in 20 minutes. So 20 minutes later, I can see
such a racer.
So 20 minutes later, I can see just a little bit better. So Hodges goes, "How are you feeling?" I go, "Oh, I'm great. I can see everything. I feel great. I can't see stuff."
Yeah.
It's a good. So anyway, green flag, I hole shot, and I can't see the first turn buoy till I'm almost to it. And it was pretty much like that most of the race. I knew the track, but we had to go a long race, and I rode it pretty easy. And anyway, I won that race, and I won Moto 2. By Moto 2, by the 785 race, my vision was back pretty good. And I did pretty good in 75 that weekend too. But, and then I won both motos and won the championship. And,
wow.
But I wouldn't recommend racing blind again, but something something. I impacted so hard. I think maybe the goggles hit my eyes or something. I don't know what happened, but it was one of those races.
Epic. Lucky you were all right in the end. So
yeah,
everybody thinks there's a common misconception that, motocross is pretty dangerous, but that if you can do motocross on water, well, it's only water you're hitting. It's a lot softer, but at 75 mile an hour, it hits like concrete.
It's, I remember my neck, the muscles in my neck, I couldn't lift my head off the pillow, but that had happened probably 3 or 4 times in crashing runabouts, where, got whiplash real good and you couldn't feel my neck at all, or couldn't lift my head.
Oh, terrible. So let's face it, for those who don't know, you really haven't stopped racing throughout your career. You've always been on a boat at some point.
I took time off, I've had some times off, it's like after 96, I raced for Riva in 96, and then 97, 98, 99, 2000, those 3 years I'd started my business.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about Jetworld Powersports.
After the 96 tour, racing, I was racing runabouts, and we didn't have that great of a year. The other teams came up with triple pipes and some other things that, we didn't have, and triple pipes and twin, and just, the Raider ended up being not the greatest platform. It was kind of big and ended up being kind of heavy. And when everybody kind of caught up in 96, they weren't very competitive. It's like, I'd be lucky to be in 8th place in the first turn on the 1200. And
yeah,
I was dealing like in 95, those Raiders, you would hit things so hard that if you weren't hanging on like as tight as you could possibly hang onto the grips, your hands would just fall right off the handlebars. There's quite a few pictures, and you see my elbows out and the crossbar right by my chest. Well, there's a reason for that. That if my hands fell off the handlebars, my chest would hit the crossbar and I could recover and grab the handlebars again and keep on going.
Yeah, keep it steady, I guess, too, because you can hold your chest on it without it just flicking.
Right. So anyway, they were, but virtue of death gripping that thing for the whole, those whole races, I freaking wore my hands out in one season. And the next year, about halfway through the race, my hands would go completely numb. And I never told anybody that. And I was supposed to ride for Riva in 97 as well. And at the end of 96, Dave and I had a conversation, and it was kind of like, he'd like to hire McCluggage back. And, what was my thought on, he was interested in having me go down and run his Florida Keys store instead of race. And, I was 33 or 34 years old at the time. So I wasn't 33. I wasn't a kid anymore by any means. And I said, you know what, Dave, I'm going to go back to California and start my own shop. And, on the ride home, Sally and I came up with the name of the shop, and, I rented a space from, in Burbank, and initially just was independent, by myself, wrench and watercraft. And then Mike Cohen, I don't know if you remember Mike Cohen. He was with PJS for years. He came and worked for me, and it just kind of, 25 years later and whatever, 8 franchises I have now.
Can you go through some of your brands and tell everyone a bit about your business that doesn't know about it?
Well, we're Sea-Doo Watercraft. Our first brand, Steve Lawler was the rep for Bombardier Recreational Products. So we took on Bombardier, ATV, Sea-Doo Sport Boat, Sea-Doo Watercraft, back in like 94. And then we eventually moved up to Castaic, and then we took on Can-Am Spyder. So we were still those brands. And then a handful of years later, we took on Beta Motorcycles, and then Husqvarna Motorcycles, Polaris side-by-sides and ATV, and then Yamaha Watercraft and Kawasaki Watercraft. And now we're selling Torah. They're a a electric kids motorcycle. It's the same company that builds the gas. It's basically a gas factory in Spain. It's primarily owned by KTM, and then Electric Motion. We just taken on that. They sell electric trials bikes. So
it sounds like an absolute, candy store full of motorsport. Must be the best place to go go and get whatever you want. Don't bring the kids in because you'll probably come out with too many other toys.
I've managed to I've managed to just take on all the stuff I like. It's like I don't sell cruiser motorcycles. I pretty much sell off-road and personal watercraft. Basically, it's like if I wouldn't want to ride it, I don't want to sell it. You know? And that's what I.
And you service as well. You can bring in your. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah. Service all that stuff.
Oh, great. All right. So if anybody wants to find it, it's jetworldpowersports.com.
Exactly.
Look, we haven't touched on modern day. So you are the current world vintage class champion for 2021, taking the title away from Wyland Redden. It must have been a lot of fun because you've gone from being there in the glory days on the 550s with the biggest names of the sport, having a fantastic career after the 550 days, owning your own business, and now you've jumped back on. And I know you've been around in sort of for the last 4 to 5 years, still bashing about on the 550s, but they must be a lot different from what you remember them. Can you tell us a bit about those differences before we get into the race?
Well, the 550s we're racing now, we've got sponsons and we've got, front and rear sponsons on these things, and 750 pumps, and they're a far cry from the things that we were racing. Although power plant wise, I've got a good motor in it, and by the builder that built my motors ages ago, but he doesn't want to get back into watercraft. So, it's Scott Clow. He's built me a really good PJS cylinder, and it is actually the original cylinder that I bought in 19 oh Jesus, I don't know, 88 maybe, probably 88. It's still that original cylinder. And
so you've taken it all the way to the world championships in the modern day.
Yeah, we had pulled the sleeves out of it, and he had created sleeves for it, and it's a good power plant. There's a couple things that really are, so beneficial. I like, these ignitions we have now. We did not have retard curves and rev limiters, back in the day.
Yeah.
So now, they accelerate so much better because you can run a bunch of timing down low, and then you back the timing off up top so it doesn't detonate and blow these things apart. And then you got rev limiters. I set my rev limiter like, I don't know, 800, something like that. And you just hold the thing wide open the whole time. You don't ever have to worry about it. Back in the day, we had to, rut, you'd on and off the gas so the thing didn't blow up. Now you just hold it wide open and just bang it off the rev limiter, and it's so much easier to ride like that.
I love it. And can you walk us through the setup from what you're able to tell us that's not too secret? So we'll go from the back, the drivetrain. You said you've got a 750 pump, so you must have done a conversion there. Yeah,
we did a conversion, use a Ross conversion kit. And I think that's how it's pronounced. He's a really nice guy. I talk to him once in a while. I run his conversion kit, everything, even the ride plate. I run the whole thing. I've got a prop that I had Glenn Perry do, although I did some tweaking on it too. I've been bending on props forever. So, and then the nozzle that's on it, I play with probably 3 different nozzles, and it depends on where and how the weather is to determine what nozzle I'm going to run. And
can you walk us through what would determine what nozzle and just describe what it looks like?
It's just the exit nozzle, your exit nozzle. And I've got 3 different ones I run with bore size. And, if the air is really cool and, dense, I can run the smaller nozzle, choke the thing down a little bit, and it'll still accelerate good. I'm 100 and, almost 180 pounds. So, my biggest competition weighs 75 pounds, so, it's got to accelerate, but it's got to have some speed too. So I just kind of like the day of the race, I watched the weather, and I think I swapped my nozzle, the day of the race to, based on what the weather was like. So,
how do they vary in diameter?
Just everyone's like maybe 1.5 millimeters different between 3 nozzles, in size, and they're just stock 750 nozzles. There's, they've got a lot of meat on them, so you get a pretty wide range of sizing that you can go. But I've kind of narrowed it down to just 3 different nozzles. And then, as far as intake rate, I'm not going to say what I run, but the boat's set up to go as fast as it'll go in 2 feet of chop. And I've been testing at this lake that's kind of near the shop, and in the afternoon, the wind comes up off the ocean, and you've got this kind of knee to thigh high chop. And I just tested for speed in that water. And that's what I was shooting for.
Do you know what kind of speeds you're getting out of them?
That boat goes 50 in 2 foot of chop.
Wow. What does it go on a glass day?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never even tested on glass. I didn't really care. It's like, I know what I'm going to be racing in, and you can get lost in testing in glass. And it's like, oh, we got 1 more mile an hour in the glass. And it's just like, in a 550, what good's it going to do you? They're so
agree.
short. they're so short, and they're just, it's like, if you're not hooked up in glass and that's really what you have to have. Things got to go fast in rough water.
I do get guilty of being a romantic from the numbers point of view. I love knowing what a top speed is, but it's absolutely irrelevant in a short course race, because if you're not accelerating really quickly and know how to handle it out of the corners, then it doesn't really matter. But I do love a good number.
Yeah, it would probably go, who knows? Guys speculate all the time, oh yeah, I got a 57 mile an hour, 550. And I always laugh. It's like, no, you don't. You don't have a 57 mile an hour 550. You're telling everybody that, but it's like, it takes a lot to make a 550 go that fast.
Yeah. And it's not like it hasn't been tried for, over 30 years now.
And I think, you take the top loader intake grate off, and in flat water, yeah, that thing will go quite a bit faster. But, anyway, they've got to go fast in rough water.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they don't go fast in rough water, they got to accelerate good. You got to get out in front of guys. And, so much of these races, like this 550 race, is start timing. And the 550, especially when you're a heavy guy, you've got to get the boat to accelerate, almost instantaneous when you get your knee in the tray. And it takes like a million starts. I don't even have to practice them. I've done so many freaking starts in my life. It's like, if you put your knee in that tray one instant too early, and the boat sinks and the boat takes off, even if you have a drop nozzle, and if the boat has to push a lot of water accelerating, you're screwed. I try to start in as shallow water as possible. And, it's just technique.
Yeah, get the best hookup. Do you have a variable pitch impeller?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not going to tell us numbers. That's okay. Moving right along. So into the engine bay, you've got a 550. Obviously, some Cloud's done some porting there. That's pretty amazing. Both PJS manifolds, intake and exhaust.
I think it's a PJS intake manifold. But that sounds. Oh no, it's not. It's a friggin' R&D that I sawed in half.
Oh right. Like a 750 that you sawed in half.
Yeah, it was a 750 that I had to cut a chunk, the center out of, bring them together. So it was two 750 manifolds.
Why is that? Why not just use or do some work to a West Coast or a PJS one?
I think all those ones that I had were 38s.
Yeah. Fair.
I'm running the big carburetors on the thing, and with the V-Force reeds and then exhaust manifold. I actually think this thing's an old Mariner manifold. I think.
Wow.
It's the one with all the, it kind of had like the cooling fins on it. I think it's a Mariner. It's like, it's been ported and it's been port matched to the cylinder. So it doesn't really matter that much, but I actually think it's a Mariner. When I look at it, I kind of chuckle when I see it. I go, man, I think this is an old Mariner manifold. And then I kind of go back and forth between a Kaufman pipe and a PJS pipe.
Both full pipes.
Yeah. No, I don't. All these guys are running the
half pipe.
The half pipes, and honestly, I have never even tested with them. So could there be some speed secrets with that? This is something that's going to happen this winter. Before next World Finals. God willing, I'll still race the World Finals. Next year. But
So what constitutes whether you change to a Kaufman or a PJS?
Just kind of working back and forth, combinations and trying to come up with something better. The best I could get was the Kaufman.
Yeah.
But the PJS will pull more RPMs. So if I end up going to a smaller prop, I may end up with a PJS back on it and spin it more. This little setup runs at, I don't know, like 7,700 or 70, something like that, 7,600. But, Scott is, it will make more, it'll actually make more horsepower at a higher RPM. But from my old testing on the 750 pumps, when I raced, an SXR 800 back in like 2003, 4 and 5, it just seems like those pumps, you start spinning them much past 7,800 and they weren't super happy.
Right.
It just seemed like they just defeat it. It wouldn't work as good as if you set it up for a low RPM. Now, if I was running a 440 pump and spinning it, 84, 8,500, for sure I'd have the PJS pipe on.
Right.
But, there's things I haven't tested, a Solus pump, that's a whole nother question.
Yeah.
A Solus pump with a little prop and PJS pipe and 8,200 or 8,400 RPM, that might be a better package than I've got right now. So it never ends. It's just the sky's the limit with this stuff.
Could that Solus pump just drop straight in with that conversion kit? You'd have to do some
you'd
mods.
have to cut you have to shave the ears off.
Right.
But I think some of these guys are running them, I think.
Yeah. And what kind of compression are you running? Quite high or conservative?
Yeah, like 220.
Yeah, right. Wow. Yep. That's the business end. And any particular brand of head that you like running, or do you swap them out regularly?
Oh, I just got some old PJS head that I've, some that works, and the cylinders.
Got some modifications to the domes,
the cylinders, the squish clearance is right, and this base gasket, whatever. All those little things make a big difference.
Well, you've got the experience firsthand as well, so you may as well put it to good use. You mentioned the ignition as well.
Just an MSD. I'm running a 3-channel MSD, twin pickups, twin coils, and one leg of the MSD is not utilized.
Right. Awesome. So any particular brand of water box or other interesting parts?
I'm running a stock FX1 water box.
Right. Wow. And I assume this is a bit of a bitzer. It sounds like something that you might see Chris Fischetti running. It works and it runs fast, but it's no show pony.
No, it's not. Looks like just a white jet ski.
Yeah.
With a motor with a whole lot of hoses and wires under the hood.
Do you have an aftermarket hood as well? Do you like to get as much airflow?
No. You don't need it.
No.
I mean, I know that sounds kind of shitty for the guys that are selling those cool looking hoods, but
it is cool.
I've got a pair of 48 millimeter carburetors with a freaking stock hood with the stock everything, and I don't know, it doesn't seem to ever starve for air.
Let's have a quick chat about the race itself. So you came in, you've got some good results in the past, which is bloody amazing, and it's not like you're a young man anymore. So, and like you said before, you've got the likes of Coy Curtis that's a whippet. He's still a young man, so he's quite light. So you've got to make up for that in horsepower and skill and timing and everything like that. Tell us about your first moto.
Well, Moto 1 probably should go backwards a little. I really pushed for the log jump for us to have the log jump and run the whole course. Cause all these guys, I think nobody really wanted to, I think everybody wanted to run the whole course. The last 4 years in a row, this is my fourth year running this thing. I think I got third 4 years ago. I think I got fifth because I crashed in the first turn in one of those years. And last year, I think I got third overall. I won Moto 2 last year.
Yep.
And then this year I thought, and everybody kept complaining, it's like, only get to run half the track. We don't get to run the log jumps. All these guys were complaining about it. So I thought, you know what? I know Scott Frazier really well. And I saw Scott at sign up and I go, you know what, Scott? I go, it looks to me like this 550 vintage class can be the biggest class in the freaking weekend. And these guys are going nearly as fast as the freaking, the super jets. I go, the two strokes. Why don't you just have us do the whole track? I know, what do you think? 6 laps, log jumps, everything.
Yeah.
I go, your log jumps now are so easy. It's like, you don't even have to bunny hop. You just run into them and they just sink down.
Yeah.
I go, these guys could all do it and the fans would love it. And he's like, let me think about it. And I bugged him again and he said, okay, we'll do it. So we got to run everything, which I thought was really cool. And I think, all the guys that go do all the work on the 550s to go and race half a track. It's like, why? The class is going to die unless these guys get to race the whole track. So, we get to race the whole track. Moto 1, I pop out in third behind Bryson. Bryson's in second. Coy sneaks in, gets out in front. I'm behind Bryson. We come into the log jump, maybe the second lap. It had to be because the first lap we didn't do the log jump. And Bryson was running pretty good at first. But then, actually, Bryson must have been in front because Coy took the split track and passed Bryson. And when Coy passed Bryson, I think it got in Bryson's head a little bit. And we got to the log jump and Bryson came over and kind of bobbled. And I went past him over the log jumps and then got in second. And I think Bryson might have missed a log jump because they docked him a lap. So Coy won it. I got second. And really wasn't much to tell. Coy pulled away. And I'm just thinking, man, this kid's going to be tough to beat. It's like, I'm going to need some luck on my side if I'm going to beat him. So go back, check the hardware. Everything's good on the boat. I just, as a recommendation, everybody building 550s, don't use blue Loctite, use red Loctite. Red Loctite, every single nut and bolt on your 550. And you got a fighting chance of things not coming apart.
So at the moment, I'll just give people a quick recap. Coy Curtis won that one with you coming in second. Drew came in third with Weiland in fourth, and fifth was Blake Cass. That was the top 5 for Moto 1.
Okay. So anyway, Moto 2, I lined up outside pole. I like the outside on the opening lap, even though you can kind of use the inside to dive. But what I don't like about the inside sometimes on the first lap is all the wake going into the first turn. And I thought in my head, sometimes with 550s, man, they don't get off the starting line good, and I may be going into, if I hole shot or I get a good start on the inside, I may have a good crack at coming into that inside green buoy with a bunch of wake there from jet skis. And on the outside, I probably won't see any of it because, and anyway, it worked out. The crazy thing though, is that second race start, it was rough. And right at the red buoy, or just about to the red buoy, there was this big roller that came in, like 4 rollers from some big ass boat.
Yeah.
And I saw it coming and I'm like, I can't just hold it wide open. I'll over jump into the third. I'll land in the third one.
Yeah.
So I lifted for a second and hopped, doubled. And I think that wake wiped out Coy.
Right.
Because I think Coy either crashed or a couple of guys on the inside crashed. I think they just held it pinned and they didn't not anticipate, but they didn't look and gauge distance of where, because they were too close. If you just hit the first one, you're going to land like in the third one. So anyway, I used 50 years of racing experience. And came through. I come down the front straight. I look over. I'm like, where the hell is everybody? And so I'm thinking, I just put my head down and rode really consistent, made no mistakes, a good pace over the log jumps. We got into the lappers. I used old racing experience. Just don't follow the lappers. Take the long way around them and just use them as moving buoys. Don't try to, the shortest distance from buoy to buoy isn't the same when you have lappers. I knew I had Coy coming up, and if I could just get around the lappers and hope Coy's inexperience would make him try to ride through the lappers, it worked. I think I got through the lappers and won it. It's just like, it's kind of just bizarre. I'm like, how did this 58-year-old geezer just beat all these kids? And
putting them to shame. It's so good though. It breeds life into the sport that, other people that of whatever age can go, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
It's just, you have to ride a lot, but you got to be thin. It's like, I slimmed down a bit. I got down to like 170, under 175, which is, close to the weight I was when I was racing stand-ups back then. I don't practice very often, partly because it beats you up, jet ski practicing beats you up. It, like that left knee that I about had to quit racing stand-ups back in 93. If I practice a little too much, that thing starts going back to its old ways. It starts wanting to swell up again. So I practice a little bit and just ride mountain bikes, ride a trials bike, and ride an elliptical, and just make sure I'm in really good shape and rely on my brain to all the practice I did at Senator's Wash to, open the file cabinet drawer and have that knowledge pop out when I go race.
Yep. They do say that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to become, perfect at anything, or to become an expert, I guess. So you've definitely delved into your file of experience there.
It's interesting. It's almost like I've got this file cabinet drawer that opens up when I get on the track, and things happen, like how you go around lappers. The file cabinet drawer opens when there's lappers in the log jump. Start straight away when there's wakes coming, and it's like, there's no time to really think. You just like, when you have all that experience, it's like, you make the right decision. And someday I'm sure that file cabinet drawer is going to come to a close when my brain doesn't work good enough to make good decisions. And that's when I won't do it anymore.
What a good experience though. What a good feeling. It must've been phenomenal. I'll just give a quick recap of the final results. We've got yourself in first, Coy Curtis second, Wyland Redden, who was last year's champion, in third. Drew, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Cesari, there we go, thank you.
And I think it's Andrew Cesari. I think that's how he pronounces it.
Yeah, Andrew Cesari. Okay, now I know. We've got Blake.
I might be butchering the name.
No, it's good. We interviewed Rachel Cummings, his partner. She was brilliant in another episode and gave us lots of insight into her career. And they're a great couple for the sport. In number 5, in 5th, we've got Blake Cass, Peyton Hill in 6th, Bryson Olsen in 7th, and then there was 18 people all up on that, which is a fantastically healthy number of people on a start line for a race. So how good is that class?
Yeah, it's very cool. I wish we had more people doing it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm on these vintage Facebook things, and it just looks like there's hundreds of guys doing this.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, guys, go to the races, come out to the finals. It'd be great to see, like 3 qualifiers, to race. I think though there may be a time where I think they may need to do a couple classes. It's like, okay, let's have the expert class, or the, or maybe we just have 2 classes, kind of like novice and expert or something. There's a pretty good gap between the Coys and the Brysons and me, and, and, compared to those skis we're on, they're really fast, and they're set up well. And then compared to, the stock skis. So maybe they should have a class for a
spec class.
maybe a spec class, or just two skill levels. You know, it's like, because if a guy, you know, Coy is really fast, and, you know, Andrew's really fast because they ride all the time. You know, Coy lives in Havasu. Andrew, you know, Andrew's a really good athlete himself, and you know, Bryson, you know, these guys are, you know, there should be two skill levels, I think.
I think that's a great idea. And hopefully what we're doing with these interviews and how everybody's talking on Facebook and whatnot, that it'll inspire other people to get out there regardless of their setup, so that they don't feel as though, well, I've only got something that's mildly modified. I don't want to get my doors blown off by these, you know, legends. But if they could split a class, I think that's a brilliant idea. Let's see, maybe you could leverage your relationship with Scott and, you know, give him a bit of a nudge.
You know, I don't know how much manufacturing support he's getting, you know, anymore. You know, I don't think he's getting much, you know, from support from Sea-Doo and from, you know, Yamaha and Kawasaki. So it's like, you know, what the hell, you know, if you've got it just seems like there's a tremendous amount of interest from these vintage machines, you know, and not just 550 stand-ups, but, you know, X2s and some of these other,
so many two-strokes.
Yeah. You know, these vintage skis. And I know, you know, maybe these two-strokes aren't, you know, politically popular as far as polluting and things like that. And it's just like, can we just get past that shit, you know, and just go racing and have fun?
Yeah, exactly. Dan, I like to end every interview with a few questions, especially from racers like yourself. We split it into three. We'll start with the first one, and that's handling. What would you say to someone that was either getting into the sport or even someone that's now in it, but what's your top tip for the best handling modification that someone can do?
Rear sponsons, front sponsons, you know, they both work in conjunction. You know, you got more than one person making sponsons, and my rear sponsons I made myself. Right. You know, but I'm working on a handling kit for these things. And
oh, great.
So, you know, I'm working on something, but you know, the sponsons make the biggest handling difference. You know, they make them handle more like a modern personal watercraft, and it makes them parabolic. You know, you look at all the new snow skis, you know, all the new snow skis are really wide in the front, wide in the tail. You know, they're parabolic and they turn incredibly well. The old skis didn't turn. And you look at a jet ski, it's not parabolic until you put sponsons on it, until you look at how a new SXR 1500 is or how a new Superjet is. And even an SXR 800, you know, basically had molded in front sponsons. So, you know, parabolic stand-up jet skis are, you know, what has made stand-ups so much easier to ride for everybody, because it's more like a motorcycle. Lean it over and the thing starts turning.
Awesome. No, that's some really good advice. What about engine setup? If someone I heard you got some 48 carbs. There's some pretty big carbs on there. What would your big tip be for engine performance?
Well, the 550 in itself, you know, you can get a reasonable amount of performance out of it. And if you're running an iron cylinder, you really need to put dual cooling in it, or just run 1/2 inch fitting into the cylinder, 2 3/8 coming out of the head, so everything is packed with water. Once you got the thing, an iron cylinder cooled properly, then, you know, you can put a little bit of compression to it, do some porting to it, you know, kind of the 86 through 1990 550 cylinders didn't need a lot of porting. They were like a ported iron cylinder right out of the gate.
Right.
So if you got an iron cylinder, just, you know, the bores tend to wear out. So just put pistons in it, run dual cooling, machine the step off the head. And then you've got something with the 1/2 inch cooling, 2 3/8 coming out. You got something that'll be reasonably reliable, and you don't have a lot of money in it. You throw front and rear sponsons on the thing and just some aftermarket ride plate, you know, that ride plate intake brake combo, and you got something that's pretty fun and be pretty reasonably reliable. You know, put everything together with red Loctite, like I said. And you know, that's the key. Now, once you get to the reed stuff, you've got several people doing you know, pretty good packages on those things. You know, Tim Tynan's doing stuff. You got Greg Beaver, Harry Clem, and there's a bunch more people than that are leaning on those motors. Those aluminum cylinders can handle more compression.
Fantastic.
Now, mind you, we're all running parts that are, 20, 30 years old.
Yeah.
And sometimes these parts aren't good. Make sure, like if you're running a 440 style, head pipe, pressure test that head pipe. Make sure you don't got water just blowing out of the jacket into it. If you're running the half pipes, same thing. Just got to really look at everything. Like with building a 550, every single part that I put on a 550, I got a big surface plate, but you can use a hunk of glass with 180 grit on it and just put water on it, just surface everything. Make sure everything's flat.
Yeah.
Make sure the heads are flat. So don't pull all the studs out of your cylinder. Make sure that's flat. Manifold surfaces are flat. So many of these things, the stuff is just, so it's old and it's really crappy, but, push comes to shove, I've got one 550 with a 750 motor in it, and, run a 750 motor with freaking stock cylinder head. I got a, motor out of a SXI, small pin motor with stock compression, and that thing runs on pump gas wide open all day, and I don't have to think about it. So
that's cool. That's training, but yeah,
it's a fun combo, and
I love it. You've given us some certain gems there in what you've just said. I love it. Thank you. Our last question is, what was your favorite race? It doesn't have to be a race. It can be a memory or time, anything along, because you've had a very long career. You've been there literally from the beginning, and you're still here now as the current world champion. So you've got a lot to choose from. What's the highlight that you can remember?
This is easy. This is actually an easy one. In 1994, I had my surf ski, which was the cylinder that I'm racing right now, that was a PJS stock ignition, Shredmaster ride plate. And we went out, Bob Morgan, who was the Shredmaster guy, he passed away about 5 years ago. And Fuzzy, he's worked for Kawasaki for 1 million years.
Right.
We go out and they've got record-breaking surf in Ventura. And
that's what you want.
It's huge.
Big storm coming.
It's like 20 foot. It's gigantic. And we launched there at Oil Piers, and when the piers still existed. And there was quite a few guys, but only the three of us launched. So we head up to Rincon. And when it's this big, we were taking off on these monsters way out in the bay and just, like surfing these things in our jet skis, nearly to the wall. And it was, I don't know, like 4 times overhead.
Wow.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And then it started getting later, and these surfers were getting stuck. They were getting stuck inside. And there was a lot of current, and the tide had come up, and they were going to get pushed into the rocks. So Bob, Fuzzy, and I, we were taking the surfers, and they would grab our ankle, and we would drag them down into the sand, where they had sand in front of them and not rock.
Yeah.
And they would, we'd pull them close to the shore and try to split the waves in between the monsters. And then sometimes you'd have to just sit there kind of in the white water, working back and forth, and then, try to get over a mountain of white water and then work back and forth and over a mountain. And we get back out and pull. And we pulled I think the three of us pulled 15 surfers.
Wow.
South to get them in front of the sand and not where the rocks were.
Just danger zone for them.
Because when it's huge like that, guys, there's surfers that go out that shouldn't be out in that shit.
Yeah.
And it was big.
And by that stage, it's too late when there's no other help out there.
Yeah, but it was so much fun to take off on one of these monsters when it was just this big hill out in the water. It was just this big hill. And you take off and you do these huge turns on this big hill, and it just kept getting steeper and bigger and steeper and bigger. And you're looking up at this thing, you're like, holy shit. And it was without a doubt the best day ever on a jet ski. And
I love it.
It outshined winning the national championship in 95 when I manipulated that race, kind of.
Yeah.
That's pretty high up there. But
did you, speaking of those waves, did you ever mistime it and maybe catch a lip and that was it? That sort of brought you back?
No.
No, that was lucky. Because you didn't have kill switches back then. And, if you let go, that's it. Where would your ski go? Straight down?
No, they didn't idle,
Yeah.
Just didn't make a mistake, Yeah.
just don't be shit.
I was, how many years ago was that? 94? I was 14. That was 26 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
But before half the class I raced against yesterday was born.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yesterday, but last month.
Yeah.
That was good, and I'd love to get out in big surf like that again. It's I've got a Richter to ride in it, but I'm tempted to put another surf boat together that's just kind of like an old school surf boat, 550.
Yeah, do it. I'd love to see that. It reminds me of the original Point Break where they're sort of searching for that wave. Yeah. That'll be you out there with your 550.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Dan, thanks so much for your time, mate. I really appreciate it. We've gone through so much stuff from literally the beginning of jet ski racing right up until today, with you being the world champion, with races in between, starting businesses, some great insight into what it's like to actually get through a career and have something else on the side as well. Like you're being an accountant. A lot of people can probably relate when they've got to make adult decisions whether they continue to race, and it seems like you've navigated an amazing career and built a really successful business within the industry. Thank you so much for your time, mate. We really appreciate it.
All right, man. Enjoyed it. It was like the trip through memory lane.
Awesome. Legend. Whoa, what a legend. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Dan as much as I did. Hearing what life was like from someone who took a path less travelled and still made it to become a pro is simply inspiring. And it proves that you can work your way through the ranks regardless of whether you have a different route to get there. I loved hearing about how Dan cut his teeth training in the early years with Jeff Jacobs, as well as his blow-by-blow account of how he won the World Vintage Class title, and that racecraft over horsepower played the pivotal role in becoming the 2021 World Champion. Another part that I really respect about Dan is his love of the sport, and that he found a way to build his passion into a business with the launch of Jetworld Powersports. I particularly liked hearing about how he only represents brands and areas of motorsport that he's interested in himself. I think that's paramount to giving the best service possible, and it sure shows with his success at Jetworld. If you'd like to find out more about what products Dan has on offer, then head over to his website at jetworldpowersports.com. As always, make sure to subscribe and feel free to share this interview link with your friends in your own jet ski community. Because as Dan mentioned earlier, the more people that get into our great sport will mean the more people we'll see on the line in future races. So until next time, legends, ride by day and wrench by night.